Welcome to the Sleepy Scribe. Your endless internet wandering has brought you here, and hopefully you can finally sleep to today's topic. Now, before we begin, comment where you are listening from, and how late it is where you are. It is very interesting to see how far and wide people come to finally be able to fall asleep. Lastly, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, it would be very appreciated. Now, let us begin. In a kingdom far beyond the whispering forests where the trees seemed to breathe with ancient secrets, there lived a young prince named Ivan, whose heart was as restless as the wind that danced through the leaves. The sun painted gold upon the hills each morning, but Ivan's gaze was often fixed upon the distant horizon, where the sky melted into a tapestry of colors that promised adventure and magic. One evening, as twilight draped the land in soft shadows, a mysterious light flickered through the branches, a shimmering feather, radiant as a flame yet delicate as a butterfly's wing. It was the feather of the legendary Firebird, a creature spoken of in hushed tales, said to blaze across the night sky leaving trails of sparks like fallen stars. Ivan, entranced by its fiery glow, reached out and caught the feather, feeling warmth pulse through his fingers as if the sun itself had touched him. This single feather stirred a longing deeper than mere curiosity. It called to him like a melody only his soul could hear. Determined to glimpse the Firebird itself, Ivan set forth at dawn, his steps light but purposeful, leaving behind the comfort of castle walls for the untamed world beyond. The forest greeted him with a symphony of rustling leaves and distant bird calls, its shadows alive with the stories of old. Each night, Ivan lit a small fire and dreamed of the Firebird soaring high, its feathers trailing embers against the starlit canvas. His journey wove through enchanted groves where flowers glowed softly with their own light, and streams sang lullabies as clear as crystal. Along the way, Ivan encountered creatures both wondrous and strange, a fox with eyes like polished amber who offered cryptic guidance, and a gentle giant whose steps shook the earth but whose heart was tender as a spring blossom. Yet the path to the Firebird was not without peril. Dark forces lurked in the tangled undergrowth, jealous of the prince's quest and eager to snatch the fiery prize for themselves. Shadows twisted into sinister shapes, and whispered warnings rode the cold wind. But Ivan's courage burned brighter than any fear, fueled by the promise held within that single feather. At last, in the heart of the deepest forest, Ivan found the Firebird perched upon a tree that shimmered with golden leaves like coins scattered by the breeze. The bird's eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom and a fierce, untamed spirit, its plumage glowing with hues of ruby, amber, and molten gold. As Ivan approached, the Firebird's feathers stirred, releasing sparks that danced like fireflies around him. The prince bowed respectfully, feeling the weight of destiny settle upon his shoulders. The Firebird, in a voice like crackling flame and whispered wind, spoke of trials to come, of quests that would test Ivan's heart and mind, demanding not just bravery but sacrifice and understanding. Ivan knew his journey had only just begun, and that the Firebird's gift was both a blessing and a challenge, weaving a story of magic and transformation that would shape his fate and the fate of his kingdom. The morning after Ivan's encounter with the Firebird, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with the scent of pine and the faint crackle of lingering embers from the mystical bird's feathers. Ivan's fingers still tingled with warmth, a reminder that the Firebird's presence was more than a fleeting dream. It was a summons woven into the very fabric of his destiny. As he ventured deeper, the trees grew taller, their branches intertwining like ancient arms guarding secrets older than time. Every step carried the weight of both hope and uncertainty, the prince's heart a steady drumbeat beneath the rustling canopy. His path soon led him to a village nestled at the edge of the forest, where peasants whispered tales of a terrible curse that had fallen upon their lands. Crops withered under a sun that no longer warmed, and a shadowy beast prowled the nearby hills, snatching livestock and filling the night with eerie howls. The villagers looked to Ivan with a mixture of fear and desperation, their eyes pleading for salvation. The prince, though weary from travel, felt the stirrings of purpose awaken within him. Remembering the Firebird's words, he understood that his quest was entwined with the fate of these people. That evening, as the village gathered around flickering fires, Ivan shared the tale of his meeting with the radiant bird, its feathers glowing faintly in the firelight. The elders spoke of an ancient legend, only the Firebird's flames could break the curse, but to find the bird again, Ivan would have to journey beyond the known forest into the realm where shadows danced and time itself seemed to falter. Undeterred, Ivan set out at dawn, guided by the soft glow of the feather and the whispered prayers of the villagers. The forest around him grew denser, the path winding through twisted roots and tangled vines that seemed to reach out like eager fingers. Strange sounds echoed, distant laughter, the crackling of leaves, the hoot of an owl that seemed almost too knowing. The prince pressed on, each challenge testing his resolve. At one point, he found himself facing a riddle-spinning willow, whose branches swayed like a puppeteer's strings. To pass, Ivan had to answer a question that wove truth and illusion so tightly it made his mind whirl. With patience and wit, he untangled the puzzle, earning safe passage and a gift, a small glowing stone that pulsed with a heartbeat of its own. The stone, the willow whispered, would light the darkest paths and reveal hidden truths. Carrying this talisman, Ivan continued, feeling the forest shift as if alive, watching, waiting. Nights were long and filled with dreams where fire and shadow danced together, weaving visions of trials yet to come. Through tangled thickets and over moss-covered stones, Ivan's journey was a tapestry of danger and wonder, every moment colored by the promise of the Firebird's fiery light and the fate that awaited him beyond the veil of the ordinary world. The deeper Ivan ventured into the shadowed heart of the forest, the air thickened with a palpable magic, an ancient energy humming beneath the soil, whispering through the leaves, and curling around the very branches like tendrils of smoke from an eternal fire. His footsteps, though weary, carried a steady rhythm as if guided by the pulse of the earth itself. The glowing stone from the willow cast a soft, warm light, illuminating the path ahead with a golden hue that danced over moss and fallen leaves, revealing secrets hidden in the gloom. Suddenly, the forest opened into a clearing unlike any Ivan had ever seen. At its center stood an enormous tree, its bark shimmering with silver and gold veins that pulsed softly like the heartbeat of the world. This was the Tree of Flames, a sacred place where the veil between realms was thin, and where the Firebird was said to return once every century to renew its power. Perched upon a low-hanging branch was the Firebird itself, resplendent and radiant, its feathers glowing brighter than 1,000 embers, illuminating the clearing with fiery hues of red, orange, and gold. The bird's eyes, deep and ancient, held a flicker of both challenge and kindness. Ivan stepped forward, the glow of the stone in his hand matching the brilliance of the Firebird's plumage. The bird's voice, when it came, was like the crackle of a hearth fire on a cold night, warm and commanding. It spoke of the trials Ivan must face, trials not only of strength but of heart and wisdom. The first challenge was to retrieve the golden apple from the enchanted orchard guarded by the serpents of sorrow. The orchard lay beyond a valley where memories could twist and ensnare those who dared enter, turning hopes into fears and courage into despair. Ivan listened, the weight of the quest settling deep within him. As the Firebird spread its wings, embers drifted like falling stars, a promise and a warning intertwined. With a final, steadying breath, Ivan prepared to leave the clearing, the warmth of the Firebird's presence lingering like a comforting cloak. The path ahead was fraught with unseen dangers, but the prince's resolve burned bright, fueled by the fire within and the flickering hope of the kingdom he sought to save. With every step beyond the clearing, the forest grew stranger, trees bending toward him as if whispering secrets, shadows flickering like restless spirits. The journey through the Valley of Memories began, each moment a test of Ivan's spirit, his mind, and his heart, weaving the next chapter of his tale in the endless dance of flame and shadow. The Valley of Memories stretched before Ivan like a dream spun from both light and shadow, a place where the past wove itself into the present with threads of gold and silver, shimmering but fragile. The air was thick with echoes, whispers of laughter and sorrow, of moments long gone but never truly forgotten. As Ivan stepped into the valley, the ground beneath his feet seemed to ripple, as if he were walking upon the surface of a still, vast lake disturbed only by his passage. The earth felt soft and pliant, like a memory being shaped anew with each step, and the faint scent of moss and ancient filled his nostrils, mingling with the crisp, clean air that carried an undercurrent of something wild and untamed. Shapes flickered at the edge of his vision, fleeting glimpses of faces from his childhood, shadows of people long gone, laughter from days when the world was lighter, and tears shed in the quiet dark of night. The valley was alive with these echoes, shifting and swirling like smoke caught in a gentle breeze, inviting and unsettling all at once. The trees that lined the valley seemed to lean in, their branches whispering secrets in languages older than the kingdom itself, leaves shimmering with dew that caught the fading light like tiny mirrors reflecting forgotten dreams. Every sound was amplified, the crunch of Ivan's boots on fallen leaves, the distant call of a lone bird, the soft sigh of the wind threading through the branches, all weaving together into a haunting symphony that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the valley itself. The golden apple he sought was said to hang from a tree at the valley's heart, its fruit radiant and glowing with an inner light that could break any curse. Legends told that its skin gleamed like molten gold, and its fragrance was like a promise of renewal, sweet and sharp as a spring dawn. Yet, the serpents of sorrow, long and sinuous with scales like polished obsidian, slithered silently through the underbrush, their eyes glowing with a melancholy fire that seemed to pierce the very soul. They guarded the orchard not with ferocity alone but with the weight of grief and regret, weaving illusions that twisted memories and tested the resolve of any who dared approach. Their presence was both a warning and a lament, for these serpents were not mere beasts but the embodiment of sorrow itself, creatures born from the deepest wells of pain and loss. Ivan's mind became a battlefield where doubt and hope clashed like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Memories of failures and losses surged like a tempestuous sea, threatening to drown him in waves of despair and self-recrimination. Faces of those he could not save, voices of loved ones lost to time, the sting of past mistakes, all rose like ghosts, attempting to ensnare him in their tangled webs. Yet, like the steady flame of a candle flickering in a drafty room, a deeper courage burned within Ivan's heart, nurtured by the Firebird's blessing and the whispered encouragement of the glowing stone resting against his chest. This courage was not the absence of fear, but the quiet, unwavering resolve to face it head-on. Step by careful step, Ivan navigated the shifting illusions, learning to discern the true from the false, the heart from the shadow. He paused often, breathing deeply, grounding himself in the present even as the valley tugged at his memories. The serpent's hiss was a soft, sorrowful song that sought to bind him in chains of guilt and fear, their voices weaving spells that played upon his deepest vulnerabilities. Yet Ivan met their gaze with steady eyes, refusing to be ensnared by their mournful melody. He remembered the lessons whispered by the willow's riddle and the firebird's fiery gaze. Truth and understanding were his allies, and only by embracing them could he hope to move forward. Time seemed to stretch and fold within the valley. Moments lengthened into what felt like hours, and hours melted into dreams where fire and shadow danced together in a hypnotic swirl. Sometimes Ivan found himself retracing steps, lost in shifting landscapes where familiar paths twisted into labyrinths of doubt. Other times, a sudden breeze carried a scent, a hint of pine or the faintest trace of smoke, that reignited his determination and pointed him toward the orchard's heart. When at last he reached the ancient tree bearing the golden apples, its branches heavy with fruit that glimmered like captured sunlight, Ivan felt a swell of triumph tempered by reverence. The tree's bark was warm beneath his fingertips, pulsing faintly with life, and the air around it shimmered with a golden glow that seemed to hum with ancient magic. With a steady hand, he plucked a single apple, feeling its warmth pulse like a heartbeat in his palm. The fruit's skin was smooth and radiant, as if forged in the fires of the sun itself, and its scent filled him with a rush of hope and renewal. The serpents, watching from the shadows, acknowledged his bravery and clarity by retreating silently into the darkness, their mournful eyes lingering like a quiet farewell, a reminder that sorrow, though ever present, could be faced and overcome. Clutching the golden apple, Ivan felt a surge of power and promise flow through him, a silent vow that the curse shadowing the village could be lifted if only he could carry this light back through the valley and beyond. Yet the valley itself seemed to sigh, its shifting light weaving new challenges and mysteries ahead like threads yet to be unraveled. With the firebird's feather still warm in his pocket and the golden apple glowing softly in his hand, Ivan pressed onward, deeper into the unknown where magic and fate awaited, each step writing the next stanza of his unfolding legend in the endless dance of flame and shadow. Beyond the valley's edge, where the memories clung like morning mist to the twisted branches of ancient oaks, Ivan stepped into a realm that shimmered between reality and myth, a place where the laws of nature bent and the air itself seemed alive with whispers of forgotten magic. The ground beneath him was soft but firm, carpeted with a layer of fallen leaves that cushioned his every step and carried the scent of earth, rain, and the faintest trace of wildflowers long faded from memory. Above, the sky stretched wide and unbroken, painted in hues of deep indigo and streaked with silver ribbons of stars that twinkled like distant fires guiding the way. As Ivan moved forward, the glowing stone from the willow pulsed steadily against his side, a quiet heartbeat in the stillness, lighting the path through this enchanted land where shadows danced just beyond the flicker of its golden glow. The firebird's feather, tucked safely within his tunic, seemed to warm in response, as if alive with the same restless spirit that filled the very air around him. The trees here were unlike those of any forest he had known, towering giants whose bark shimmered with iridescent hues, leaves that whispered secrets in languages forgotten by time, and roots that curled and stretched like the fingers of ancient giants weaving through the soil. The canopy above filtered the starlight into kaleidoscopes of color, casting dancing patterns on the forest floor that seemed to move with a life of their own. Ivan felt a thrill of awe mingled with a trace of unease. This was a place where magic held sway, where the very fabric of the world felt stretched thin and alive with possibility. It was here that Ivan encountered the guardian of this realm, a great stag with antlers like branches of crystal, eyes glowing with a soft, knowing light. The stag's presence was both majestic and gentle, radiating a calm strength that seemed to steady the restless winds within Ivan's heart. The creature regarded him with a silent invitation, and Ivan understood that this guardian was a test of his worthiness, a final threshold before the ultimate meeting with the Firebird itself. As Ivan approached, the stag lowered its head in a slow, deliberate bow, a gesture of respect and trust. In that moment, the prince felt a surge of connection, not just to the creature before him, but to the entire enchanted forest, to the threads of magic that wove through every leaf, stone, and breath of wind. The stag then turned and bounded gracefully through the underbrush, its steps leaving trails of shimmering light that marked the way deeper into the heart of the realm. Ivan followed, his resolve firm and his spirit alight with anticipation. The path wound through glades where fireflies flickered like living stars, over mossy banks where tiny streams murmured secrets, and beneath arches of blooming flowers that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Along the way, Ivan's thoughts wandered to the kingdom waiting beyond the forest. The villagers, their hope resting on his success, and the curse that darkened their days like an unyielding storm cloud. His journey felt heavier now, burdened with the weight of their lives and the fragile thread of salvation he held in his hand. Yet, each step forward rekindled his courage, the glowing stone's steady pulse and the Firebird's feathers' warmth a constant reminder that he was not alone in this quest. At times, moments of lightness broke through the tension, such as when a mischievous sprite darted out from behind a tree, weaving between Ivan's legs and causing him to stumble, eliciting a rare, genuine laugh from the prince. These small bursts of joy were like bright embers in the night, keeping his spirit from darkening under the weight of destiny. Deeper still into the realm, the air grew warmer, charged with an electric hum that seemed to vibrate through Ivan's very bones. Ahead, a clearing opened, bathed in a radiant glow that pulsed with life and power, the sacred nest of the Firebird. The prince paused, heart pounding like a drumbeat that echoed through the silent forest. There, amid a nest woven from golden twigs and glowing embers, lay the Firebird itself, majestic and resplendent beyond anything Ivan had imagined. Its feathers blazed with colors that shifted like molten metal, eyes shining with ancient wisdom and fierce intensity. The bird lifted its head, meeting Ivan's gaze with a fierce but gentle fire that spoke of trials faced and victories won, of sacrifice and transformation yet to come. Ivan stepped forward, the glowing apple in his hand warming with the same vibrant light as the Firebird's plumage. The moment stretched, electric and profound, a silent promise of the final steps of his quest unfolding between them as the night held its breath. The moment Ivan stood before the radiant Firebird, the very air seemed to pulse with a sudden intensity, as if the forest itself held its breath. But before Ivan could speak or make a move, a figure emerged from the shadowed woods, a woman clad in robes that shimmered like moonlight on water, her eyes deep pools of ancient wisdom. She was Morazana, the enchantress of the frosted glades, known among whispered legends as a guardian of the delicate balance between fire and ice, warmth and chill. Morazana's arrival was like a sudden breeze that cools a fevered brow, her presence both calming and formidable. "Prince Ivan," she said, her voice a melody woven from the soft crackle of ice and the distant chime of bells, "to claim the Firebird's gift, you must first prove worthy through the trials of heart and mind." The Firebird itself lowered its blazing head, as though inviting Ivan to listen. Morazana explained the first trial, a test of courage. Ivan would have to venture to the Mirror Lake, where the waters reflected not only the body but the deepest fears and desires hidden within the soul. Only by facing and accepting these shadows could Ivan hope to move forward. With the Firebird's feather and the glowing apple safely stowed, Ivan set forth under Morazana's watchful gaze. The path to Mirror Lake twisted through groves where frost glistened like 1,000 diamonds, each leaf and twig coated in delicate ice, sparkling under the pale sunlight. The air was crisp and sharp, each breath a cloud of mist that hung briefly before fading into the stillness. As Ivan neared the lake, the trees thinned, revealing a glassy expanse of water so clear and calm it was as if the sky itself had melted into the earth. Ivan peered into the lake, and the surface rippled, revealing visions not of the world around him but of his own heart. Memories of moments when he had faltered, fears of failing those who depended on him, and desires, some noble, some selfish, washed over him like waves. The lake whispered secrets, daring him to confront the truth within. For hours, Ivan wrestled with these visions, sometimes sinking beneath the surface of his doubts, other times rising with renewed resolve. When at last he stepped back, breath steady and heart lighter, the lake shimmered in approval, and a soft glow emanated from its depths, a token of acceptance to carry on. But the trials were only beginning. Morozana appeared once more, her smile enigmatic. "The second trial will test your wisdom and compassion," she said. "You must seek the grove of whispering trees, where voices of the past and future intertwine. There, you will find the lost child, a spirit trapped between worlds, whose fate is tied to the curse upon your kingdom." Guided by Morozana's cryptic words, Ivan journeyed onward. Along the way, he met new companions: Alexander, a quick-witted hunter with eyes as sharp as a hawk's and a grin that could light the darkest woods, and Yelena, a healer whose touch soothed wounds and whose knowledge of herbs rivaled the ancient lore of the forest itself. Their companionship brought warmth and laughter amid the shadows, and together they faced dangers that tested their trust and friendship. When they reached the grove of whispering trees, the air thrummed with voices, soft murmurs of hope and despair, echoes of laughter and tears. Among the rustling leaves, a pale figure appeared, a child no older than 10, with eyes wide and frightened, caught between worlds like a leaf caught in a restless stream. Ivan and his companions sought to free the lost child, unraveling the threads of sorrow and magic that bound the spirit, their efforts weaving courage and kindness into the very air. But the shadow that cursed the land was not idle. The sorcerer's tower rose jagged and cold against the swirling mists, its dark silhouette cutting through the forest like a wound. Ivan, Alexander, Yelena, and the lost child moved silently through the twisted roots and tangled undergrowth, the air thick with the acrid scent of burnt herbs and ancient curses. Shadows curled around their feet, and the faint hum of dark magic vibrated beneath the soil, pulsing with a rhythm as relentless as the beat of Ivan's own heart. Morozov's presence was a chilling wind that whispered threats on the edge of hearing, a storm gathering in the silence before the strike. As they neared the tower's base, twisted vines writhed like serpents, and the ground seemed to pulse with a life of its own, eager to bar their passage. Alexander's keen eyes caught movement, shapes lurking just beyond sight, watching and waiting with hunger in their gleaming eyes. With a signal, Ivan steeled himself, gripping the Firebird's feather close as a talisman against the dark. Yelena stepped forward, chanting in a language older than the forest, weaving protective wards that shimmered like fragile webs of light. The air crackled as the wards met the shadowy forces summoned by Morozov, a clash of ancient powers that sent ripples through the clearing. Suddenly, the twisted shapes lunged, wraith-like creatures with clawed hands and eyes burning with cold fire. Alexander's arrows flew swift and true, each shot finding its mark, while Ivan moved with surprising grace, parrying attacks and striking with the glowing apple that seemed to pulse with the fire of the phoenix itself. Yelena's healing light wove between them, mending wounds and bolstering spirits as the battle raged beneath the looming tower. Through sweat and determination, the group pressed forward, breaking through the shadows until they stood at the twisted iron gates of Morozov's fortress. Ivan's fingers brushed the cold metal, the glowing stone in his pocket pulsing in response as if urging him onward. With a shared glance, the companions stepped inside, the heavy doors groaning shut behind them like the closing of a tomb. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of smoke and something fouler, a stench that clung to the walls like a living thing. Flickering torchlight cast long shadows that danced and twisted, while distant echoes of whispered incantations seemed to crawl along the stone. The halls stretched labyrinthine, walls adorned with ancient runes that pulsed faintly with dark magic, weaving spells of confusion and despair. Ivan's resolve sharpened. Each step was a defiance against the creeping darkness that sought to unmake him. Through twisting corridors and looming chambers, the group encountered traps and illusions designed to test their minds and hearts. A hall of mirrors reflected not their faces but their fears made manifest, visions of failure, loss, and the unraveling of hope. It was here that Ivan grasped the full weight of the Firebird's gift and curse, understanding that his strength lay not in power alone but in the light he nurtured within himself and among those who journeyed with him. Deeper still, a voice echoed, a low, mocking tone that wound through the tower like smoke. Morozov stepped from the shadows, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. Clad in robes that seemed woven from night itself, he regarded Ivan with a mixture of disdain and curiosity, as if sizing up a puzzle he had long awaited. "So, the prince comes seeking flame in the heart of darkness," Morozov sneered, voice like cracked ice. "Do you think you can claim what is not meant for mortals? Fire burns, and power devours. What will you sacrifice when the flames consume all?" Ivan met his gaze without faltering. The warmth of the Firebird's feather a steady blaze against the chill of the sorcerer's presence. Alexander and Yelena stood ready, their trust and determination a shield woven from shared trials and unspoken bonds. The lost child clung close, a fragile light in the gathering shadows, their fate intertwined with the outcome of the battle to come. The chamber seemed to pulse, magic thickening the air as the final confrontation edged ever closer, a storm of flame and shadow poised to erupt. The chamber's air shimmered with tension, every breath heavy with the weight of unseen forces gathering like a brewing tempest. Morozov's eyes glinted coldly, tracing patterns in the air as he began weaving incantations that twisted the very fabric of reality, summoning shadows that writhed and coalesced into spectral forms. These phantoms surged forward like a tide of darkness, their wailing cries filling the room with despair's chilling song. Ivan tightened his grip on the glowing apple, its warmth spreading through his fingers like liquid sunlight, steadying his racing heart. Alexander moved with lethal precision, loosing arrows that streaked through the shadows, piercing the phantoms before they could reach them. Yelena's hands danced in intricate patterns, calling forth a radiant shield of light that shimmered around the group, pushing back the encroaching darkness with waves of pure energy. The lost child, trembling yet resolute, whispered a soft prayer taught by Yelena, their voice a fragile beacon piercing the gloom. The battle raged in a whirlwind of fire and shadow, light and despair intertwining in a deadly dance. Morozov's laughter echoed, sharp and bitter, as he unleashed a tempest of icy shards that cut through the air like shards of glass. Ivan dodged and countered, the golden apple pulsing fiercely, its light slicing through the frost like a beacon of dawn. Every strike Ivan made was met with resistance, a test of endurance as the sorcerer's magic sought to unravel not only his body but his spirit. Yet, with each challenge, Ivan's resolve deepened, the bond with his companions forging a fortress stronger than any spell. The chamber itself seemed alive, walls shifting and twisting as if breathing, the very stones resonating with the clash of wills. Suddenly, amidst the chaos, Ivan felt a surge of warmth, not from the apple or the feather, but from within, a flame kindled by trust, courage, and hope. Drawing upon this inner fire, he stepped forward, voice ringing clear as a bell through the tumult. "Your darkness cannot snuff out the light we carry. Together, we are more than power or magic. We are the flame that endures." The words, simple yet profound, seemed to ripple through the chamber, weakening Morozov's spells and dissolving the shadows that clung to the air. The sorcerer's expression flickered, a shadow of doubt crossing his features. The battle reached a crescendo, a clash of wills and elements that bent the very space between them. Flames roared to life, chasing away the cold and shadow, while light and courage intertwined in a blaze that filled the chamber with brilliant radiance. Amidst this storm, Ivan seized the moment, raising the golden apple high as it ignited with fiery brilliance, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Morozov, caught in the brilliance, staggered back, the dark magic unraveling like smoke in the wind. The fate of the Firebird, the lost child, and the kingdom hung in the balance, the tide of battle turning with every heartbeat. The blazing light from the golden apple spread like wildfire through the chamber, its radiance pushing back the shadows that clung to every corner with desperate fingers. Morozov's dark robes fluttered wildly as if caught in a storm, his sneer twisting into a mask of disbelief and fury. The walls, once alive with twisted magic, began to crack and crumble, ancient runes fading into dust as the pure light cleansed the space. Ivan's heart pounded, each beat a drum calling forth strength from deep within, a strength born not just of magic but of the bonds forged through hardship and hope. Alexander stood firm beside him, bow drawn and ready, his eyes sharp and unwavering, while Yelena's soothing chants wove a tapestry of healing and protection that surrounded them like an unbreakable shield. The lost child, no longer trembling, held Ivan's hand tightly, their gaze steady and filled with a quiet courage that belied their fragile form. Morozov's voice rose in a final, desperate curse, the sound like shattering glass, but the light from the apple grew even brighter, swallowing the darkness like the dawn chasing away the night. With a cry that echoed through the forest beyond the tower, Ivan hurled the glowing apple toward the sorcerer, the fruit bursting into flames of pure, radiant fire as it met Morozov's shadow. The sorcerer screamed as the fire enveloped him, his form dissolving into a swirl of smoke and embers that drifted away on a sudden breeze, leaving behind only silence and the faint scent of burnt herbs. The oppressive weight that had hung over the land lifted, replaced by a gentle warmth that seeped into the earth, healing the scars of magic and despair. Ivan lowered his arms, the glowing apple's fire dimming to a soft glow as the chamber settled into calm. The Firebird stirred, its feathers shimmering like living flame, and with a powerful beat of its wings, it soared upward, casting a trail of sparks that ignited the night sky with a brilliant display of light. The lost child smiled, their spirit freed from the chains that had bound them between worlds, now glowing with newfound life and hope. Alexander let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, his grin breaking through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds, while Yelena's eyes sparkled with tears of relief and joy. Outside, the forest seemed to breathe anew, leaves shimmering with dew that sparkled like diamonds in the dawn. The curse that had shadowed the kingdom began to fade, its grip loosening with every passing moment, promising a future born from the ashes of hardship and the fire of courage. Ivan looked toward the horizon, the first light of morning painting the sky in hues of gold and rose. The journey far from over, but the path forward now lit with the promise of renewal and the unyielding flame of hope. The light of dawn spilled over the kingdom like a gentle tide, washing away the shadows that had clung to every corner for so long. Ivan, Alexander, Yelena, and the lost child stepped out from the ruined tower, their faces illuminated by the soft golden glow of morning, the air fresh and filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers and damp earth. The forest around them seemed to hum with life, leaves rustling in a breeze that whispered promises of renewal and growth. Birds sang songs that danced on the wind, a chorus celebrating the fragile beauty of a world reborn from the ashes of darkness. The Firebird soared overhead, its fiery feathers trailing streaks of light that painted the sky in hues of orange and crimson, a living beacon of hope for the kingdom below. Ivan felt the weight of the glowing apple now resting warm in his palm, a symbol not only of victory but of the trials endured and the bonds forged along the way. The lost child, once a fragile spirit trapped between worlds, now walked with a confidence that seemed to ripple through the very air, their laughter light and free like the tinkling of crystal bells. As the group made their way back through the forest, the paths seemed less twisted, the shadows less oppressive, as if the land itself recognized the healing that had begun. Alexander's keen eyes caught the flicker of movement ahead, where villagers had gathered, their faces etched with cautious hope and wonder. Yelena's gentle touch soothed weary bodies and hearts, her knowledge of herbs and healing blossoming into renewed strength among the people. Ivan's thoughts turned to the kingdom's future, a future built not only on magic and courage but on the resilience of those who had endured the darkest nights. The once cursed lands began to stir with life, fields sprouted green shoots, rivers sparkled with clear water, and the air was filled with the hum of bees and the chirping of crickets. In the villages, children played in the streets, their laughter ringing out like bells, a sound that had been absent for far too long. The elders spoke in hushed tones of the prince who had braved shadows and fire, a tale that would be woven into the fabric of their history for generations to come. Yet, amidst the joy and renewal, Ivan knew the journey was far from complete. The scars left by darkness would take time to heal, and new challenges would surely arise like storms on the horizon. But for now, the kingdom basked in the soft glow of dawn, the promise of a brighter tomorrow cradled gently in the hands of those who dared to hope. The Firebird's song echoed faintly on the breeze, a lullaby of flame and freedom that carried the story onward, as the prince and his companions stepped forward into the unfolding light of a new day. The soft morning light filtered through the trees as Ivan and his companions continued their journey back to the heart of the kingdom, each step stirring the fresh earth beneath their feet and carrying with it the promise of healing and renewal. The air was alive with the gentle hum of life reborn, buds unfurling like delicate flames of green, streams bubbling clear and bright, and the songs of birds weaving a tapestry of sound that seemed to cleanse the lingering shadows from their souls. Alexander moved with the easy grace of a seasoned hunter, his eyes sharp and alert for any signs of lingering danger, yet there was a lightness to his step now, as if the burdens of the past trials had been lifted like a heavy cloak. Yelena, her hands still fragrant with the herbs of the forest, hummed softly, her voice carrying a soothing melody that seemed to encourage the growth around them, as though her very presence was a balm to the wounded land. The lost child skipped ahead with newfound joy, chasing after fluttering butterflies and marveling at the vibrant colors that painted the world anew. Ivan felt a steady warmth radiating from the glowing apple nestled in his palm, its gentle pulse a reminder of the strength that came not just from magic but from the unbreakable bonds of friendship and hope. As they approached the village, The sounds of life grew stronger, a chorus of voices, laughter, and the rhythmic hammering of tools as villagers began the work of rebuilding homes and hearts alike. Faces turned toward them with wide eyes, a mixture of disbelief and awe, as whispers of the prince who had conquered darkness spread like wildfire. Children pressed forward, eager to touch the Firebird's feather peeking from Ivan's cloak, their eyes shining with wonder and dreams yet to be born. Elders nodded in quiet respect, their weathered hands clasped in gratitude for the light restored to their world. Among the villagers, stories began to weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life, tales of bravery, sacrifice, and the fiery spirit that refused to be extinguished. Market stalls reopened, their colors vibrant against the backdrop of freshly painted houses and blooming gardens. The scent of baking bread and simmering stew filled the air, mingling with the crispness of morning dew and the faint trace of the Firebird smoke on the breeze. Ivan took a moment to stand atop a gentle hill overlooking the village, the glowing apple warm in his hand and the Firebird's feather catching the sunlight like a flicker of flame. The path ahead was uncertain, shadows still lurking beyond the edges of their newfound peace, but the promise of tomorrow burned bright within him. Together with Alexander, Yelena, and the lost child, Ivan descended toward the village, stepping forward not as a solitary hero but as part of a living, breathing tapestry of hope and renewal. Threads intertwined by trials faced, hearts joined by courage, and a future waiting to be shaped by those who dared to dream. The village welcomed Ivan and his companions with open arms, a vibrant mosaic of life slowly knitting itself back together from the frayed edges of despair. Children darted through narrow lanes, their laughter weaving through the air like silver ribbons, chasing after cats with tails puffed like miniature thunderclouds, while elders gathered in circles beneath ancient oaks, sharing tales of days before darkness had settled like a thick fog over the land. Stalls brimming with fresh bread, ripe berries, and wild herbs burst with color, their scents mingling in the morning air to create a tapestry of comfort and hope. The villagers' hands, roughened by toil and care, now worked side by side, rebuilding homes and mending fences with a newfound purpose. Each nail hammered and stone laid a quiet act of defiance against the shadows that had threatened to consume them. Ivan, his cloak still carrying the faint scent of the enchanted forest, moved among them with a humble smile, the glowing apple nestled safely in his palm like a secret flame. Alexander's sharp eyes scanned the bustling scene, always alert but also softened by the warmth of reunion, while Yelena's gentle touch and knowledge of healing plants spread relief like a balm to weary bodies and restless minds. The lost child, once a fragile spirit tethered between worlds, now ran freely among the villagers, their laughter a bright spark igniting the hearts of those who had almost forgotten how to hope. Yet amidst the bustle and rebirth, Ivan's thoughts often wandered to the deeper wounds unseen, the fears lingering in quiet corners, the doubts that still flickered beneath smiles, and the long road ahead toward true healing. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with strokes of amber and rose, Ivan found himself drawn to the village square where a gathering was taking place. An elderly storyteller, his face etched with lines carved by years and wisdom, spun tales of ancient heroes and distant lands, his voice a warm embrace against the cooling evening. Children and adults alike leaned in, their eyes wide with wonder as the old man's words painted vivid pictures of dragons and firebirds, of princes who faced darkness and emerged stronger. Inspired by the stories, Ivan stepped forward, sharing his own tale, not just of battles fought and curses broken, but of friendship forged in fire, courage born from fear, and the enduring power of hope. His voice carried across the square, weaving a new thread into the village's growing tapestry of resilience. As twilight deepened, lanterns flickered to life, casting a gentle glow that danced on the faces turned toward the storyteller's circle. Songs rose, laughter bubbled, and for a moment, the village felt timeless, a place where past and future entwined, and the promise of dawn lingered just beyond the horizon. And so the days unfolded, each one a step forward on the path of renewal, the land and its people healing like a great tree regrowing after a fierce storm, roots deepening, branches reaching ever upward toward the light. Seasons began to shift as the kingdom embraced the slow, steady breath of renewal, the air thick with the scents of fresh earth and blooming wildflowers that carpeted the fields like a living quilt. Ivan walked among his people with the quiet strength of one who carries both the memory of hardship and the spark of a brighter future, his footsteps stirring the soft soil where new crops took root. Alexander's laughter rang out like the crack of a bowstring during the village's lively festivals, where songs and stories wove through the warm night air, tethering the past to the present in joyous celebration. Yelena's hands, ever gentle and sure, tended to both the land and the spirits of those who had been touched by darkness, her herbs blooming in vibrant gardens that spilled fragrance into the breeze like liquid sunshine. The lost child, now a symbol of hope and resilience, darted through the village with boundless energy, their laughter mingling with the song of the wind and the hum of bees dancing from blossom to blossom. Yet beneath this tapestry of life, whispers of distant troubles stirred, news of unrest beyond the borders, shadows creeping in new forms, and old fears that refused to be forgotten. Ivan's gaze often turned toward the horizon, where the forests met the mountains and the sky stretched wide and endless like a promise waiting to be claimed. There, beyond the familiar paths, lay challenges yet unseen, tests that would demand all the strength, wisdom, and heart he had gathered on his journey. One evening, beneath a sky strewn with stars that glittered like scattered gems, a messenger arrived bearing tidings from a neighboring realm, a land gripped by a creeping darkness that threatened to spill over and choke the fragile peace they had fought so hard to reclaim. The messenger spoke of strange beasts that prowled the forests, of crops failing and waters turning bitter, and of people who whispered prayers to forgotten gods in desperation. Ivan listened, the fire of determination igniting anew within him. He knew that his quest was far from over, that the light kindled in his heart must now reach beyond his own kingdom to kindle hope in others. With his loyal companions by his side, Ivan prepared to embark once more into the unknown, their bonds forged in fire and shadow a shield against the coming storm. The Firebird's feathers glowed softly, a beacon to guide them through darkness and doubt, while the golden apple's steady warmth pulsed with the promise of renewal and strength. Together, they stepped forward beneath the vast expanse of the night sky, ready to face whatever trials awaited with courage born from the journey already walked. The night air was thick with anticipation as Ivan, Alexander, Yelena, and the lost child prepared to leave the village behind, their hearts heavy with the weight of both farewell and duty. Lanterns flickered softly along the winding path as villagers gathered to bid them safe passage, their faces a mixture of hope and worry, shadows playing across the worn lines etched by seasons of hardship. The Firebird perched on Ivan's shoulder, its feathers glowing faintly in the moonlight like embers waiting to burst into flame. The golden apple nestled securely in his satchel pulsed with a gentle warmth, a reminder of the trials conquered and the power yet to be harnessed. As they stepped beyond the familiar woods, the landscape shifted beneath their feet. The trees grew taller and denser, their branches intertwining like fingers weaving a dark tapestry against the starry sky. Strange sounds echoed through the underbrush, the snap of twigs, the whisper of leaves, and the distant howl of creatures unseen. Alexander's keen eyes scanned the shadows, bow at the ready, while Yelena murmured soft prayers, calling upon the spirits of the earth and air to protect their journey. The lost child held tightly to Ivan's hand, their small fingers a steadying anchor amidst the growing uncertainty. Days stretched into weeks as they ventured deeper into the unknown, each step a dance with danger and discovery. They encountered villages cloaked in silence, fields choked with weeds, and rivers that ran thin and bitter, signs of the darkness seeping into the land like ink spreading across parchment. Yet amidst the decay, flickers of life endured, wildflowers blooming defiantly through cracks in the stone, birds singing melodies that threaded hope into the heavy air, and the quiet resilience of those who refused to yield. Along the way, new allies emerged: Ilara, a fierce warrior with eyes like molten gold and a blade that sang with every strike, and Thomas, a scholar whose knowledge of ancient lore and forgotten magic provided a lantern in the shadowed forests. The forest grew darker and thicker as Ivan and his companions pressed onward, the trees looming like silent sentinels guarding secrets older than memory. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a reminder that life and death danced in an endless cycle beneath the canopy. Ilara moved with the grace of a predator, her eyes sharp and unblinking, while Thomas trailed behind, clutching ancient scrolls and murmuring incantations to ward off the creeping shadows. The lost child's laughter, once bright and free, now rang more cautiously through the stillness, their small hand never leaving Ivan's. Nightfall brought its own terrors, the eerie howl of wolves that seemed to vanish before they could be seen, and the flicker of eyes watching from the darkness like embers glowing in a dying fire. One evening, as the moon hung low and swollen, the group stumbled upon a clearing bathed in silver light. At its center stood a stone altar, carved with runes that pulsed faintly with forgotten magic. Thomas approached cautiously, fingers tracing the weathered symbols as a story unfolded, a tale of a forgotten pact between mortal and spirit, a promise broken and a curse unleashed. The air thickened as whispers rose from the earth, swirling around them like a chill wind carrying voices from beyond. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and from the shadows emerged a creature woven from mist and sorrow, its eyes deep pools reflecting endless grief. Ilara raised her sword, the blade singing a sharp note that cut through the silence, while Ivan stepped forward, the Firebird's feather glowing bright against the gloom. The creature spoke in a voice like the rustle of dead leaves, revealing its tragic tale of betrayal and loss, bound to the land by pain and vengeance. Rather than drawing steel, Ivan offered words of compassion and understanding, weaving a tale of forgiveness and hope that shimmered in the cold night air like a fragile flame. Slowly, the creature's form softened, the mist dissipating as the ancient sorrow lifted, leaving behind a blessing that shimmered like morning dew. With renewed spirits, the group pressed onward, the trials of shadow and light weaving them closer together, their journey a testament to the enduring strength found in unity, courage, and the gentle power of kindness even in the darkest of times. As dawn stretched its golden fingers over the treetops, the companions emerged from the veil of the haunted grove, their faces pale but eyes gleaming with the strange clarity that follows a night of terror overcome. The sky had the soft blue hue of brushed silk, dotted with the faintest remnants of stars, and the air felt fresher, as if the forest itself had exhaled after centuries of tension. Ivan walked with a steady rhythm now, his boots caked in mud and memory, his tunic bearing signs of wear, but his back unbent. The Firebird's feather, ever nestled at his side, shimmered more brightly with each passing day, pulsing like a heart tuned to something ancient and powerful that waited just beyond the horizon. They came to a river not found on any map, its waters so clear they mirrored the sky in perfect detail, as if the heavens had melted and flowed through the earth. Thomas leaned over the bank, peering into the current with the narrowed eyes of a scholar. "This isn't water," he said after a long pause. "This is memory." And indeed, when Ivan crouched beside him and peered in, he saw not his own reflection, but moments from his past, his mother's hand guiding him as a boy, the day his father set a crown of leaves upon his head and called him brave. Ilara, ever suspicious of magic that showed more than it gave, stayed a step back. The lost child, however, tiptoed to the edge and laughed as scenes of their forgotten family danced beneath the surface like fireflies under glass. The river spoke, not in words but in rhythm, pulling at the senses. To cross it, Thomas explained, each traveler had to offer a memory in return. Ivan closed his eyes, reaching into himself like one digging through an old chest, and let go of a memory of a sunny morning in the palace orchard, where the peaches grew fat and golden, and the breeze smelled like laughter. The river rippled, accepted the gift, and a silver path began to shimmer across its surface. Ilara offered something more complex, a jewel beneath a winter moon, her first taste of blood and fear and triumph tangled into one sharp moment. The path widened. Thomas gave up an afternoon under an oak tree with his first master, whose laugh was like thunder wrapped in honey. And the lost child, with eyes unusually solemn, let slip a moment of music, a lullaby, perhaps, sung by a voice that no longer had a name. When they stepped onto the path, it held firm beneath their feet, cold as polished glass and as thin as trust. The river whispered beneath them, a soft susurrus of lives once lived, and the air carried a weightless kind of sadness. Halfway across, the wind changed, and from upstream came a boat without oars or sail, gliding toward them silently. It bore a single passenger, a woman in robes of mist, her eyes milky white and her hands resting on the edge of the boat like sleeping birds. She said nothing as she passed, but each of them felt her gaze pass through their chests like candlelight through glass. Thomas shuddered and muttered something about the watcher of forgotten things. Ivan looked back once she vanished into the fog, but the path behind them had already dissolved. On the far shore, the land had changed. What had once been thick forest was now rolling hills dotted with odd stones, some shaped like sleeping faces, others like keys, others still like grasping hands half buried in moss. "Charming," Ilara remarked, nudging one of the stones with her boot only to jump back as it grumbled something in a deep, gravelly voice. The hills, it turned out, were alive in a fashion. They were the resting grounds of the Whisperers, ancient beings who had once sung the first songs of the world. Disturbing them meant inviting riddles, and riddles in this land were dangerous sport. One such stone began humming a question, and Thomas, never one to resist intellectual bait, answered back. The result was a sudden drop of earth beneath his feet, and he vanished with a startled squawk. Ivan lunged, caught his cloak, and hauled him back to safety, both of them tumbling into a heap of leaves and curses. "Let's not do that again," Ivan panted. The hills seemed to chuckle. Beyond them lay a copse of trees wound together by silver vines, and at its heart stood a gate woven from thorns and sorrow. A sentinel awaited them there, not with blade or challenge, but with a harp carved from bone and strung with hair finer than silk. She strummed once and spoke a single word, truth. The gate would open only to the truth spoken aloud, and not just any truth, but the one buried deepest in their hearts. Ivan stepped forward, his voice catching on the edge of admission, then steadying. "I fear I'm not worthy of the journey I'm on," he said, and the gate quivered. Ilara followed, her voice dry but raw. "I don't believe in heroes, but I'm starting to believe in this one." The gate trembled. Thomas, adjusting his crushed hat, muttered, "I think I might be more afraid of succeeding than failing." The gate creaked, and the lost child whispered, "I miss the name I don't remember." The gate opened, not with a groan but with a sigh, as though relieved it could finally release its burden. Beyond it, the world shimmered anew, and somewhere, far away but drawing closer, a firebird sang again. Beyond the sighing gate, the silver vines slowly unwound like old memories loosening their grip on the mind, and the trees, previously bound tightly like braids, now stood apart, revealing a path of soft moss lit by pale floating lights. The lights bobbed as if breathing, exhaling the faint scent of lavender and something older, something like the dust of forgotten dreams. Ivan stepped forward first, his boots sinking slightly into the moss that gave underfoot like a cradle. The firebird's feather at his side pulsed with greater warmth, as though it too felt the nearness of something long awaited. The others followed close behind, though not without unease. The mossy path curved gently like a sleeping snake, leading into a vale surrounded by twisted oaks whose trunks bore faces, not carved, but grown, twisted expressions frozen in bark. One tree wept sap through hollow eyes, while another grinned too wide, teeth of lichen and fungus smiling into the stillness. "I don't like this place," Ilara murmured, hand on her dagger. "It's like a bad joke someone whispered too many times." Thomas nodded solemnly, though his eyes flickered with interest. "These are the trees of regret. They grow where too many choices curdle in the air. Some say they sprouted from the thoughts left behind by the dead." "Oh, delightful," Ivan muttered, pressing forward. The veil opened slowly, and at its center stood something unexpected, a village. Tiny houses with roofs of moss and walls made of cobbled bark, doors barely up to Ivan's chest, chimneys emitting curls of smoke scented with cinnamon and pine. But it was the residents that gave them pause, little folk, no taller than a rabbit, with oversized heads and eyes that blinked sideways like frogs. They wore acorn caps for helmets and tunics stitched from squirrel fur and moth wings, and they carried tiny spears fashioned from porcupine quills. At first, they scattered like startled mice. Then one brave soul emerged, holding aloft a thimble like a war banner, and squeaked, "State your business or prepare to be thoroughly annoyed." Ivan blinked. "We mean no harm. We're just passing through." The little warrior narrowed his eyes. "Passing through? Nobody just passes through the veil of murmur. Either you're lost or cursed. Or perhaps both." Thomas knelt. "We've crossed a river of memory, met a woman in mist, and answered riddles that nearly swallowed us whole. If that doesn't count as cursed, I don't know what does." At that, the little folk relaxed somewhat and even offered tea, served in hollowed nutshells with milk stolen from beetles and honey borrowed from bees with questionable consent. Their leader introduced himself as Thistlecap, chief guardian of the border of wistfulness. He had a laugh like a hiccup and an uncanny ability to make anyone feel like they'd forgotten something important. "We've been watching the skies," he said, puffing on a pipe that emitted lavender instead of smoke. "The firebird's been restless. That usually means change is coming. Or a bad harvest. Or both. We're seeking the firebird," Ivan said. "And perhaps something more. There's a darkness ahead. We can feel it." Thistlecap nodded solemnly. "Aye, the shadow veil. No one passes there unscathed. But before you go, you'll need something most travelers forget." "A map?" Ilara asked. "A sword?" Thomas suggested. "Clean socks," ventured the lost child. "Perspective," Thistlecap replied with a wink. And then he called forth the village's greatest secret, a theater troupe. Before Ivan could object, a stage unfolded from a hollow log, complete with curtains made from butterfly wings and lights fashioned from fireflies who grumbled about the hours but did their job nonetheless. The play began, an exaggerated pantomime of the hero's journey thus far, with tiny puppets resembling Ivan and the others being chased by ridiculous monsters and narrowly avoiding doom with absurd luck. Ivan's puppet tripped over its own sword every few steps. Ilara's puppet refused to speak and instead stabbed everything, including a tree and a breakfast plate. Thomas's puppet wore glasses 3 times too big and burst into tears at dramatic intervals. The lost child's puppet simply floated offstage at random and returned with a pastry. The audience of tiny folk roared with laughter, and even Ivan cracked a smile. For all its silliness, the play mirrored something real, how they had become not just companions, but a kind of odd family, stitched together by shared peril and stubborn hearts. Thistlecap bowed at the end. Now you've seen yourselves as others see you, which is always less glamorous and much more hilarious. Can we go to the scary place now? Ilara asked, though she didn't hide her smirk. Thistlecap nodded. To the edge of the shadow veil, then. But beware. That place feeds on fear like a hungry dog at supper. As they left the village, the little folk tossed dried petals and soft berries at their feet, a farewell both ceremonial and slightly sticky. The path turned again, winding through a region where the sun seemed reluctant to shine. The trees grew taller, thinner, leaning together like gossiping old women sharing secrets no one dared to repeat. Their bark had turned grey, almost silver, and the wind began to carry strange echoes, voices not their own, whispers without breath. The shadow veil loomed ahead. Here, even the Firebird's feather dimmed slightly, as if muffled by the heavy air. The ground felt soft but not welcoming, more like a sponge soaked in secrets. Shapes flickered between the trees, some tall and regal, others crawling, some familiar enough to ache in the heart. Thomas muttered, "This is where the past tries to rewrite itself. Don't listen. Don't follow." The first trial came in the form of a fork in the path. Not one of earth, but of illusion. Each traveler saw a different road ahead. Ivan saw his father's voice calling from a hall of light. Ilara saw her old commander, arms crossed, asking if she'd finally become the traitor she feared. Thomas saw a library burning, the flames spelling out equations he'd never finished. The lost child heard their name, not the one they had now, but the one forgotten, called from a distant echo like a song hummed too quietly. But it was the Firebird's feather that saved them. It pulsed a low heat, enough to draw their hands toward it, and when they looked again, the path was singular, straight, and silent. They walked faster now, as if chased by the selves they left behind. Shadows flitted in the corners of their vision, some sad, others angry, none willing to leave without a final stare. And just ahead, past the last tree shaped like a weeping woman, something vast waited. A clearing. A heartbeat. A figure wrapped in black. The next trial had arrived, and it wore the face of someone Ivan once trusted. Under the last arching bough of the shadow veil, where light filtered through leaves as thin as whispers and the earth no longer smelled of moss but of cold stone and old breath, the figure waited. It stood still as if carved from night itself, its silhouette bearing the edges of someone once loved, a brother, a mentor, a friend perhaps, but twisted just enough to feel wrong, like a lullaby sung off-key. Ivan stepped forward, and the figure mirrored him, each movement precise, as though a reflection on the surface of black water had stepped into the world and forgotten it wasn't real. The others held back, instinct pressing on their chests like a warning drum. Ilara gripped her dagger, Thomas muttered half-formed spells under his breath, and the lost child took one step behind a tree, peeking out with wide, unblinking eyes. "You've come far," the figure said, voice smooth like polished bone. "But you carry more than the Firebird's feather. You carry doubt, and guilt, and promises broken before they were ever made." Ivan's jaw tensed, fingers twitching at his side. "We all carry things. Doesn't mean we stop walking." "No," it said, "but it means you arrive weaker. And I will test that weakness." It stepped aside, revealing behind it a circle of standing stones, black as pitch and veined with glowing red like the cracks in a weary heart. In the center of that circle stood a cage of thorns, and within it, curled like a comet in slumber, was the Firebird. Even dimmed and unmoving, it shimmered with golds and crimsons, feathers shifting in unseen breezes, eyes closed but lids flickering with dreams. "Free it," said the shadow, "and you take its burden. Let it lie, and you walk away unchanged. But the world burns either way." Ilara stepped forward now, shoulders squared like cliffs bracing against a storm. We didn't come this far to leave the Firebird behind. We didn't cross rivers of memory and eat beetle milk tea with thimble warriors to back out now. Thomas nodded, pulling a scroll from his pack, hands steady though his eyes gleamed with unease. Let's do this together. One mind, one heart, one foolhardy mission. The lost child giggled, skipping into the circle and touching one of the stones. It hummed under their palm, and the thorns hissed. The cage was alive. Careful. Thomas snapped, but the child only grinned. It likes me. Ivan approached the cage, the Firebird's feather in his hand glowing warmer, brighter, like a candle remembering how to become a bonfire. As he raised the feather, the thorns reared back, snarling in dry rustles, and the figure of Shadow stepped into the ring. You are not enough, it said simply, and with that, split into four. One faced each traveler, wearing their face, mouthing their fears. Ivan saw a version of himself bowed by a crown too heavy, alone on a throne of ash. Ilara's double accused her with every wound she'd ever left behind. Thomas's counterpart mocked his knowledge, twisting facts into fears. The lost child's Shadow simply wept, repeating their name like a broken music box. But this time, none of them stood alone. Ivan turned to his fear and laughed, the sound scraping but real. I've made mistakes. I'll make more. But I'm still walking. Ilara stepped forward, blade flashing. You think you scare me? I am my fear. I sharpened it myself. Thomas whispered a word that was less spell and more apology, and his shadow faded like a nightmare at sunrise. The lost child walked to their mirror, placed a hand on its cheek, and said, "You can go now." And it did. The cage cracked. The thorns shriveled. The Firebird opened its eyes. And oh, how it glowed. Like dawn breaking in a forgotten world. Like a song remembered in silence. Like laughter echoing after a long winter. It rose, vast wings unfolding, scattering embers that did not burn but bloomed into light. The figure of Shadow hissed, tried to melt away, but the Firebird's light pinned it still. Ivan stepped toward it and, for once, felt no hate. You're a part of me, he said softly. But not the part that wins. With that, the Shadow dissolved, not in pain, but in peace. As if it, too, had grown tired of haunting. The Firebird spoke not in words, but in warmth, a voice felt beneath the skin, around the bones, deep in the belly where truth likes to sleep. It offered each of them a gift. To Ilara, a memory returned, her sister's voice, lost in war, now a song humming in her bones. To Thomas, clarity, the question he'd never solved finally completing itself like a puzzle clicking into place. To the lost child, a name, not forced upon them, but one they chose, Rue. And to Ivan, the choice. The Firebird bowed before him. He could take its flame, its power, and rise as a guardian of fire and fate. Or he could release it, let it fly free, and trust that his journey had already lit a spark strong enough to guide others. Ivan looked at his friends. At Ilara wiping her eyes without admitting she was crying. At Thomas humming equations under his breath. At Rue skipping among the ashes like a child chasing stars. And he smiled. Fly, he said. We'll be all right. The Firebird soared, trailing fire that seeded flowers, laughter, and life in its wake. The forest changed behind it, grey melting to green, twisted trees straightening like spines long bent. And Ivan, Ilara, Thomas, and Rue walked home, though not the same home they had left. This one had different walls, higher skies, and new paths that branched toward places they had yet to dream of. But that's the funny thing about stories, they don't end when the book closes. They nestle in your heart, warm as feathers, soft as fire, waiting to be told again. And somewhere, deep in the trees, a thimble warrior raised a toast, fireflies blinked in applause, and the trees whispered, not in sorrow, but in song. The wind smelled like thunder long before the storm came. Ivan, Ilara, Thomas, and the lost child crested the final ridge just as the clouds rolled in, dark and swollen, dragging dusk across the sky like a heavy curtain. Below them lay the ruins of an old keep, older than even the kingdom's oldest songs, where ivy strangled stone and the walls leaned as if whispering secrets to the earth. But deep within, nestled in the heart of time's ruin, pulsed the glow of golden feathers. Thomas muttered incantations beneath his breath, his fingers tracing runes through the air like a spider spinning silk. Ilara unslung her bow, her gaze sharp and her stance coiled like a spring, ever watchful, for every place of great magic had its guardian, and they never liked visitors. Ivan stepped forward, feeling the weight of every step, memories sacrificed, battles fought, kindness offered, and the strange, burning pull of destiny that had kept his feet moving through every trial. As he reached the threshold, the wind stopped. The rain paused. The air held its breath. And the last guardian emerged. It was not a dragon, nor a knight in cursed armor, nor a chimera stitched from nightmares. It was a woman. Not old, not young, her age shifted with every blink, and her eyes were galaxies turned inward. She did not speak, but Ivan understood. She was the final test. Not of strength, or wit, but of will. "Will you trade your life for hers?" she asked, not with sound but with thought that pressed into the marrow. "Will you return to your kingdom, crownless and forgotten, if it means she flies free?" Ivan turned to his companions. Ilara nodded once, tight-lipped. Thomas tilted his head as if hearing distant music. The lost child clutched Ivan's hand like it was a rope in a storm. "Yes," Ivan said. "Even if my name is lost, she must fly." The woman blinked once. The wind resumed. The storm broke, and in a blaze that turned the clouds gold, the Firebird burst free. Her wings were flame and starlight, her cry both joy and sorrow spun together, and in that moment, the ruins bloomed. Flowers sprang from cracks, moss glowed like emeralds, and the air sang with color. Ivan fell to one knee, not in defeat, but reverence. The Firebird, now free, landed before him. Her gaze held centuries, but her touch was a whisper. She lowered her head, and from her crown of burning feathers, one drifted down into Ivan's palm. "I do not grant wishes," she said, her voice like sunrise over still water, "but I return gifts." Light burst around them. When it faded, they stood not in ruins, but in a garden. The Firebird was gone, but her warmth lingered. Thomas found his master's old staff waiting at his feet. Ilara discovered her sister's name carved into the stone wall, proof she had not been forgotten. And the lost child, with wide eyes and trembling fingers, remembered a lullaby. Ivan, now featherless, looked to the sky. There was no throne awaiting him, no parades or crowns. But in his heart, something steadier had taken root, a peace that hummed like the earth after rain. He turned to his companions. "Shall we go home?" he asked. And together, they began the long walk toward dawn. Welcome to the Sleepy Scribe. Your endless internet wandering has brought you here, and hopefully, you can finally sleep to today's topic. Now, before we begin, comment where you are listening from and how late it is where you are. It is very interesting to see how far and wide people come to finally be able to fall asleep. Lastly, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe. It would be very appreciated. Now, let us begin. In a tiny village nestled between rolling emerald hills and whispering forests that stretched as far as the eye could wander lived a humble miller and his wife. Their cottage, no larger than a humble showbox tucked beside the bubbling brook, was worn but full of warmth. The air carried the sweet scent of fresh bread baking and the gentle melody of birdsong threading through open windows. The miller's hands were calloused from years of grinding grain into flour, and his wife's eyes shone with kindness despite the hardships they bore. They were simple folk wrapped in the quiet rhythms of a peaceful life, yet a yearning shadowed their days, a wish for a child, a little soul to call their own, to fill the silence with laughter and the small, urgent footsteps of youth. The miller's wife often whispered her longing to the stars that blinked shyly in the velvet night sky. "If only," she murmured one crisp evening, "if only the stars could grant us a child, no matter how small." The moon smiled down softly, as if in gentle reply, casting a silver glow that cradled the earth like a loving mother. And then, one magical morning, when the air was still and the dew sparkled like tiny diamonds on the grass, their wish was answered. From the heart of a shimmering rose that bloomed beside their door, a baby no bigger than a thumb peeked out with bright, curious eyes the color of summer sky. He was Tom Thumb, the littlest child in the world, but with a spirit vast as the rolling hills and a heart bursting with courage far beyond his tiny frame. His fingers were as delicate as the petals of the rose, yet they clutched his parents' hands with a fierce love and determination that belied his size. Tom's laughter tinkled like silver bells, and when he crawled across the wooden floor, it was as if a gentle breeze had stirred the dust motes into a dance. Though small enough to fit into a walnut shell, Tom was never timid. His eyes sparkled with mischief and wonder, and his mind brimmed with stories and dreams bigger than the tallest mountains that framed their village. Each morning, the miller would lift Tom onto his shoulder, where the boy could see over the thatched rooftops and spy the faraway lands that called to him like a siren's song. The birds would chirp greetings, and the flowers seemed to lean in closer, enchanted by the tiny boy who dreamed like a giant. Yet, being so small came with its perils. A cat's playful swipe was a tempest, a spilled drop of water a roaring river. Tom's adventures began right at home, where every day was a challenge turned to triumph, a test of wit and bravery wrapped in the guise of ordinary life. Once, he slipped from his mother's apron and was swept away by a swift breeze that carried him like a feather on the wind. He sailed past stunned hens and wagging dogs, his laughter echoing like a joyful song, until he landed softly atop a mushroom cap in the garden, where a family of ants welcomed him as a giant among their kind. The village folks marveled at the little boy who lived in their midst, his size no measure of his spirit. Stories of Tom's cleverness spread like wildfire, how he outwitted the barn cat, how he rode on the back of a sparrow to see the world beyond the village, and how he helped his parents in ways no one else could. Despite his size, Tom was a hero of sorts, a tiny titan whose courage and heart left footprints larger than any giant's. And so, from this humble beginning in the soft embrace of the miller's cottage, Tom Thumb's story began, a tale of wonder, danger, laughter, and the endless adventure found in a world both vast and intimate, told beneath the gentle glow of starlight as if whispered by the night itself. The morning sun stretched its golden fingers across the village rooftops, bathing the miller's cottage in a warm, honeyed light that danced through the open windows and kissed Tom Thumb's rosy cheeks as he stirred from sleep. Though tiny as a thimble, he was filled with dreams as vast and swirling as the clouds above. Outside, the world awaited him, a place of endless wonder and lurking danger woven together like threads in a great tapestry. As Tom climbed onto the windowsill, the breeze played with his dark curls and carried scents of fresh earth and blooming flowers that tickled his nose. Like a leaf caught on the wind, he felt the pull of adventure beckoning him beyond the garden gate. His parents' gentle voices drifted from the kitchen, where the soft clinking of spoons and the warm scent of porridge filled the air. But Tom's eyes were fixed on the distant woods, where shadows shifted mysteriously beneath ancient oaks and the song of hidden birds teased his imagination. He wriggled down from the sill, his small feet tapping softly on the wooden floor, and set out toward the door, his heart pounding with excitement and a hint of nervousness. For though he was tiny, Tom's spirit was bold and curious, a flame that refused to be dimmed. As he stepped outside, the morning dew clung to the blades of grass like countless tiny jewels sparkling in the sun, and the world seemed enormous, alive with possibility. His first challenge appeared swiftly. A mischievous sparrow swooped down, curious about the tiny boy in its domain. The bird's eyes gleamed with playful intelligence as it fluttered nearby, chirping a song that seemed almost like a greeting. Tom laughed, a clear, tinkling sound, and reached out his hand. The sparrow landed lightly on his finger, its feathers soft as the petals of the wildflowers that nodded gently in the breeze. Together, they embarked on a tiny journey through the garden, weaving between towering stalks of corn and navigating past bustling ants whose black bodies shone like polished onyx under the sun. The ants paused, their antennae twitching in fascination at the sight of this miniature human who walked among them as an equal. The garden was a jungle, every leaf a canopy, every flower a mountain, and every puddle a vast lake to be crossed with care. At one point, Tom had to leap over a shiny beetle with a shell as dark and smooth as polished ebony and narrowly avoided a wandering snail that left a shimmering trail like a silvery river behind it. As the sun climbed higher, Tom and his feathered friend reached the edge of the garden, where a narrow path led into the dark embrace of the forest. Beyond the familiar safety of his home, the forest was a place of whispered secrets and shadows that danced with every flicker of light. The trees stood tall and proud, their branches weaving a canopy that filtered the sunlight into a patchwork of gold and green. The air smelled rich and earthy, alive with the songs of unseen creatures and the rustle of leaves stirred by gentle breezes. Tom's heart raced with both excitement and caution, for here lay the unknown, a realm where his courage would soon be tested. And as he stepped forward, the sparrow took flight, circling above as if to say, "Fear not, little one, adventure awaits." The forest greeted Tom Thumb like a vast cathedral, its towering trees arching overhead with leaves whispering ancient secrets in the soft wind. The path beneath his tiny feet was lined with moss as green as emerald velvet and scattered petals that glowed faintly in the dappled sunlight. As he ventured deeper, the chorus of birdsong wove around him in a symphony that seemed both joyful and mysterious. Shadows flickered between the trunks, and Tom's sharp eyes caught glimpses of curious creatures, bright-eyed squirrels darting like flashes of cinnamon and white, and shy rabbits whose noses twitched nervously at his presence. Every step felt like a new discovery, the ordinary transformed into the extraordinary by his diminutive size. He passed beneath great mushrooms that rose like umbrellas and beside ferns that curled like the scrolls of ancient manuscripts. At one point, a sudden rustle in the underbrush startled him, and he froze, heart pounding. But out leapt a hedgehog with spines gleaming like polished bronze. The creature sniffed curiously and, sensing no threat, curled up into a spiky ball that seemed almost too large to believe. Tom laughed softly at the odd sight and carefully tiptoed around the hedgehog as if crossing a living fortress. The deeper he went, the thicker the forest became, sunlight filtering through leaves in golden shafts that seemed almost magical. Here, the air was cooler and smelled sweetly of pine and damp earth. It was a place where time felt slower and the boundaries between reality and fairy tale blurred. As Tom wandered, he came upon a sparkling stream that babbled happily over smooth stones. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the sky like a mirror and dotted with tiny fish that darted like silver arrows. He knelt beside the stream, cupping the cool water in his tiny hands and watching the ripples dance away like little boats setting sail. Beyond the stream, a soft glow caught his eye near the roots of an ancient oak. The light shimmered and pulsed as if breathing with the life of the forest. Curious, Tom crept closer and discovered a circle of delicate blue flowers that glowed faintly in the shade. The flowers seemed to hum with magic, their petals shimmering like spun glass. He reached out to touch one and felt a gentle warmth spread through his fingers as if the forest itself was welcoming him into its secret heart. As he sat amidst the glowing blooms, a sudden rustling sounded above, and looking up, he saw a face peering down, a small, sprightly figure with eyes as bright as stars and hair that sparkled like morning dew. It was a forest sprite, a guardian of the woods whose smile was both mischievous and kind. The sprite's voice was like the tinkling of bells as she spoke. "Little one, you are brave to come so far alone. The forest holds wonders but also perils. Do you seek adventure or wisdom?" Tom's eyes sparkled as he answered, "Both, I think. For the world is so big and I want to know it all." The sprite laughed softly and waved her hand, causing the flowers to glow brighter. "Then your journey has only just begun. Come with me, and I will show you wonders beyond your dreams." With that, the sprite floated down, her laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves as Tom felt a thrilling sense of wonder and possibility surge through him. The forest, vast and alive, had opened its heart and beckoned him deeper into its magical embrace. The sprite's laughter tinkled through the forest like sunlight filtering through leaves, casting playful shadows that danced along the moss-covered ground. Tom's heart quickened with a mixture of excitement and wonder as he followed her delicate footsteps, barely making a sound amid the forest's soft symphony. The air grew thick with the scent of wildflowers and ancient trees, a perfume that seemed to weave itself into his very soul. The deeper they ventured, the more the forest transformed around them. The trees grew taller, their trunks wider than the biggest houses in Tom's village. Their branches intertwined high above, creating a cathedral of green and gold where beams of light pierced through like the spotlight of some grand stage. Everywhere Tom looked, magic shimmered, the leaves shimmered with iridescent hues and the flowers glowed faintly in shades of blue and violet. As they walked, the sprite's voice became a soft melody weaving stories of the forest's secrets and the creatures who dwelled within. "Here lives the wise old owl who watches through the night and guards the ancient knowledge of the woods," she whispered, pointing to a hollow high above where gleaming amber eyes blinked slowly. "And there, beneath the fern, sleeps the gentle deer whose footsteps bring life to the forest floor." Tom's eyes followed her gestures, drinking in the wonder of every detail. It was as if the forest itself was alive and breathing in rhythm with his own heartbeat. Suddenly, the sprite paused and knelt beside a cluster of violet blueberries. "These are the berries of courage," she explained. Their delicate skin shimmered like morning dew. "Eat one when you feel afraid, and it will fill your heart with bravery." Tom reached out and plucked a single berry. The moment its juice touched his tongue, a warm glow spread through him, chasing away any lingering fears. The sprite smiled knowingly and took his hand. "There is much to see and learn, but be wary, for not all is as gentle as it seems." Just then, a rustle sounded nearby, and from behind a thicket emerged a fox with fur like burnished copper. Its eyes gleamed with curiosity and intelligence. The fox circled Tom once before sitting back on its haunches as if inviting him to follow. With a nod from the sprite, Tom set off alongside the fox, whose swift movements seemed to cut through the underbrush like a whisper. The forest path wound around ancient oaks whose roots twisted like giant serpents and crossed bubbling streams that sang songs of old. The fox led Tom to a clearing bathed in golden sunlight where magnificent stag stood proud. His antlers stretched wide like branches of the forest itself, and his eyes held a calm wisdom that seemed to see through to Tom's very soul. The stag bowed his head in greeting and with a voice deep and gentle spoke, "Welcome, little one. You have traveled far and shown great courage. The forest honors you." Tom felt a warmth spread from his chest as if the stag's words were a gift wrapped in sunlight and shadow. Here in this enchanted clearing, the tiniest boy felt as grand and mighty as any hero of legend. His journey had only just begun, but already he knew the forest's magic would be with him always, guiding his steps and lighting his way. Tom's heart swelled with awe as he gazed at the majestic stag, whose antlers seemed to cradle the very sky itself, twisting and turning like ancient branches reaching out to touch the clouds. The sunlight danced upon the stag's coat, a shimmering tapestry of russet and gold that flickered like flames in a gentle breeze. The clearing itself felt sacred, as if time had slowed to honor this moment, and the soft hum of the forest seemed to pulse in rhythm with Tom's own quickening breath. The stag's deep voice lingered in the air, reverberating through the trees like a comforting melody. "Little one, the forest has watched you with quiet eyes, and it is clear you possess a courage beyond your years. But courage alone is not enough in this realm of magic and mystery. There are trials you must face to prove your worth and unlock the true power hidden within you." Tom swallowed hard, the weight of those words settling warmly in his chest despite a flicker of nervousness that danced like a shadow in the corners of his mind. The stag continued, his gaze steady and kind. "To journey through the forest is to walk a path woven with light and darkness. You will meet creatures both friend and foe, and each will test your heart and mind. Take these words with you, trust your spirit, be swift with your wits, and never forget the kindness that burns brighter than any flame." As the stag's voice faded into the rustling leaves, a sudden breeze swept through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of pine and wildflowers. Tom looked down to see nestled at the stag's hooves a small leather pouch, worn and weathered yet pulsing with a gentle warmth. Intrigued, he picked it up and found inside a handful of tiny, shimmering seeds that sparkled like fragments of starlight. "These are the seeds of hope," the stag said softly. "Plant them in places where darkness threatens to take root, and light will grow in their stead." Tom's fingers closed tightly around the pouch, feeling a surge of purpose and possibility fill him. The forest, vast and mysterious, had given him a gift not just of courage but of hope and a mission that stretched far beyond his tiny stature. With a final nod, the stag stepped back into the trees, his form dissolving into a golden mist that floated upward like the breath of the earth itself. Left alone in the clearing, Tom felt the forest's quiet magic settle around him like a protective cloak. His thoughts danced with dreams of the adventures ahead, of challenges to face and mysteries to unravel. Yet beneath it all burned a steady flame of determination, as fierce and bright as the morning sun. Rising, Tom tucked the pouch of seeds safely into his satchel and glanced toward the shadowy path that led deeper into the woods. A gentle rustling caught his attention, and from behind a thicket emerged a curious fox with eyes sharp and gleaming like polished amber. The fox's sleek fur gleamed like molten copper in the dappled light, and its tail flicked once before it regarded Tom with a knowing gaze. Without hesitation, the fox began to trot down the path, glancing back as if urging Tom to follow. With a deep breath and a heart pounding with excitement, Tom stepped forward, his tiny feet firm upon the earth, ready to face whatever wonders and perils awaited beyond the veil of trees. The forest whispered around him, alive with promise and peril, as the smallest hero began the next chapter of his extraordinary journey. The forest path stretched ahead like a ribbon of mystery, weaving through towering trees whose branches knitted together to form a canopy dappled with sunlight and shadow. Tom Thumb followed the copper-colored fox whose agile steps barely disturbed the carpet of fallen leaves and moss beneath them. Each breath Tom took was filled with the rich scent of earth and pine mingled with the faint sweetness of wild berries ripening in hidden clusters. As they moved deeper, the sounds of the forest grew richer, a chorus of birdsong, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, and the gentle murmur of a distant brook. The fox paused beside a fallen log thick with emerald moss and nudged Tom gently with its nose as if inviting him to rest. But Tom's eyes gleamed with eagerness and he shook his head lightly. There was too much to see, too much to learn in this enchanted place. The fox seemed to sense his determination and with a soft whine resumed their journey, guiding Tom along a narrow trail that twisted and turned like the coils of a serpent. Shadows danced around them as beams of sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting the path in patches of gold and green. Every now and then a squirrel would dart across their way, its bushy tail flicking like a flame, and a flash of color would catch Tom's eye, a flash of blue from a hidden bird or a glimmer from a spider's web strung like silver lace between the branches. The forest felt alive with stories waiting to be discovered and secrets eager to be told. Suddenly, the fox stopped and lowered its head, sniffing the air with sharp nostrils. The scent was faint but unmistakable, a hint of smoke and the sweet tang of baked bread. Tom's stomach rumbled, reminding him of the morning meal he had left behind. Yet this was no ordinary smell. The forest seemed to breathe with a life all its own as Tom listened intently to Maila's soft voice, weaving melodies that hummed through the air like the gentle caress of a summer breeze. Each note carried the wisdom of centuries, the secrets of leaves and streams whispered from one generation of trees to another. Tom's heart swelled with a newfound connection to the world around him, as if the roots of the ancient oaks stretched out to embrace him, their strength lending him courage and peace. With each lesson, he learned to hear the subtle rustle of leaves speaking of distant rains, the murmur of the wind hinting at approaching storms, and the gentle footsteps of unseen creatures tiptoeing through the underbrush. The forest was no longer a vast, unknowable expanse but a living, breathing companion, rich with voices and stories waiting to be heard. As twilight deepened, painting the sky in hues of lavender and rose, Maila guided Tom outside to a quiet glade where fireflies danced like tiny stars come to earth. Their glow flickered softly among the ferns, casting a spell of light and shadow that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the forest. "Now," Maila whispered, "you are ready for the next step." She handed Tom a small, polished stone etched with ancient runes that shimmered faintly in the dimming light. "This stone will help you call upon the forest's strength when you are in need, but remember, it is your heart and spirit that hold the true power." Tom clutched the stone tightly, feeling its smooth surface warm beneath his fingers as the forest night wrapped around him like a velvet cloak. The stars above twinkled gently, as if winking in approval, while the soft hoot of an owl echoed from the shadows, a sentinel watching over the smallest traveler's path. Filled with hope and resolve, Tom thanked Maila and prepared to continue his journey deeper into the enchanted woods, where mystery and magic intertwined, and where the next adventure awaited beyond the veil of ancient trees. Tom stepped lightly from the glade, the polished stone warm in his pocket and the forest's whispered secrets filling his ears like a gentle song. Each footfall upon the mossy earth was a step into the unknown, yet Tom's heart beat with a fierce bravery, as though the very trees themselves had planted courage inside his chest. The shadows lengthened and twisted, weaving patterns on the forest floor that danced in time with the fading light, but Tom's eyes gleamed with the thrill of discovery rather than fear. As he moved deeper, the woods thickened around him, their ancient trunks standing like silent guardians who had witnessed countless tales unfold beneath their boughs. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the quiet, a flutter of wings and a soft, melodic chirp. From the bushes emerged a small bluebird, its feathers shimmering with the delicate hues of the morning sky. The bird hopped closer, cocking its head as if inviting Tom to follow. Without hesitation, Tom took the hint, trailing behind the bright little guide as it led him through a labyrinth of ferns and flowering shrubs, each step revealing new wonders. A spider weaving silver threads across branches, a family of rabbits nibbling tender shoots, and a sparkling brook where sunlight fractured into prisms upon the water's surface. The path twisted and turned until they arrived at a hidden clearing, where a ring of ancient stones stood weathered but proud, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with a mysterious energy. The bluebird fluttered to the center and began to sing, its song weaving through the air like a spell. Tom watched, mesmerized, as the stones began to glow softly, bathing the clearing in a pale, ethereal light. The air hummed with magic, and Tom felt a deep connection to the ancient power surrounding him, a reminder that even the smallest among us can be part of something vast and timeless. The glow from the ancient stones bathed the clearing in a gentle light, casting long shadows that flickered like playful spirits across the moss-covered ground. Tom stood quietly, feeling the hum of magic seep into his very bones, as if the forest itself had reached out to cradle him in its timeless embrace. The bluebird's song grew softer, weaving into the rustling leaves and distant whispers of the woods. Suddenly, from the edge of the clearing, a figure emerged, a tall, slender woman cloaked in flowing robes of shimmering green that seemed woven from the forest itself. Her hair cascaded like a waterfall of autumn leaves, and her eyes held the depth of ancient wisdom and the sparkle of youthful curiosity. "Welcome, Tom Thumb," she said, her voice as clear and soothing as a mountain stream. "I am Lysandra, guardian of the forest's heart. You have come far, and the forest has watched your journey with great care." Tom's heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of awe and anticipation swirling inside him. Lysandra stepped forward, her bare feet barely making a sound on the soft earth, and she reached out a slender hand, inviting him closer. "The forest's magic is bound not only to the trees and the creatures but to the courage and kindness that dwell within your soul. To continue your quest, you must prove that your heart is true and your spirit unyielding." She lifted a small, glimmering crystal from a pouch at her side, a prism that caught the light and fractured it into 1,000 dancing rainbows. "This is the crystal of clarity," Lysandra explained. "It reveals the truth hidden in shadows and reveals the path when all seems lost. But it will only shine for one who walks with honesty and bravery." Tom reached out and took the crystal, feeling its cool surface pulse with gentle warmth. He looked up at Lysandra, determination blazing in his eyes. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady despite the tiny tremor of nerves fluttering inside him. Lysandra smiled and nodded, then gestured toward a narrow path winding deeper into the forest, where the light grew dim and the trees leaned close as if whispering secrets just beyond hearing. "Go forth, little one. The trials ahead will test all you have learned and all you hope to become." With a final reassuring glance, Lysandra stepped back into the shadows, leaving Tom alone with the glowing crystal in his hand and the echo of her words ringing like a promise beneath the canopy of ancient leaves. Tom took a deep breath, the cool crystal warm in his palm, its light pulsing softly as if alive. He stepped onto the narrow path, where shadows clung like thick velvet and the scent of damp earth mingled with whispers of forgotten tales. Every step echoed with the crunch of leaves beneath his tiny feet, each sound magnified in the stillness of the deep woods. The trees towered overhead, their branches twisting into intricate patterns that wove a tapestry of darkness and light, like the delicate lace of a spider's web shimmering in morning dew. As Tom ventured further, the forest seemed to close in around him, a silent maze of ancient roots and flickering shadows. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the underbrush, sending a shiver down his spine. From behind a mossy rock emerged a creature, large and sleek, its eyes glowing amber like molten gold, fur as black as the midnight sky. Yet despite its formidable appearance, the creature's gaze held a curious intelligence rather than menace. Tom's heart pounded fiercely, but he remembered Lysandra's words, honesty and bravery. Slowly, he stepped forward, meeting the creature's gaze with steady eyes. "I mean no harm," he whispered, voice steady though small. The beast lowered its head, a deep rumble vibrating like a purr, then turned, beckoning Tom to follow. With cautious hope, Tom trailed after the shadowy guardian through winding paths and over trickling streams, each step a dance of trust and courage. Together, they ventured deeper into the forest's heart, where mysteries awaited and the true test of Tom's spirit was about to unfold. The shadowy guardian led Tom through a labyrinth of ancient trees, their trunks gnarled and twisted like the hands of time itself, reaching out to touch the sky. The air grew thick with the scent of moss and wildflowers, and the soft murmur of a distant waterfall beckoned them onward. Tom's small heart beat with a mixture of awe and anticipation as he followed silently, each step measured and careful over roots that tangled like serpents beneath his feet. Suddenly, the guardian paused beside a crystal-clear pool, its surface smooth as glass and reflecting the canopy above like a living mirror. The amber eyes of the creature met Tom's gaze once more, and with a gentle nudge, it urged him forward. Taking a deep breath, Tom knelt by the water's edge and peered into the depths, where shadows shifted and shimmered beneath the surface. There, faintly glowing, lay a cluster of luminous stones, tokens of the forest's ancient magic, pulsing with quiet power. As Tom reached out a trembling hand to touch one, the water rippled, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. A voice echoed softly in the rustling leaves. "Only those pure of heart may claim the light." Tom's fingers closed around a smooth, glowing stone, warmth flooding through him like sunlight breaking through clouds. The Guardian's eyes gleamed with approval as the pool's surface settled into perfect stillness once more. With the stone in hand and the Guardian at his side, Tom felt the weight of his quest deepen, knowing that the challenges ahead would require all his courage, kindness, and cleverness to unlock the forest's true secrets. The glowing stone nestled warmly in Tom's palm, radiating a gentle light that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The pool's surface shimmered faintly, reflecting not only the canopy above but also the flickering determination in Tom's eyes. Around them, the forest whispered softly, its ancient breath weaving through the leaves like a lullaby for the brave. The Guardian stepped closer, its sleek black fur shimmering in the dappled light, eyes filled with a quiet pride as if sharing in Tom's newfound strength. With a slow nod, the creature turned toward a narrow path veiled by thick ferns, their edges glistening with drops of dew like tiny jewels. "This is the way of trials," the forest seemed to say, a path where shadows and light danced in an eternal embrace. Tom's fingers tightened around the glowing stone as he stepped forward, feeling the soft earth beneath his feet, the cool whisper of the breeze brushing against his cheeks, and the subtle thrum of magic thrumming in the very air. Each step forward was a heartbeat, a promise, to himself, to the forest, and to the quiet hope that no matter how small he was, his spirit could shine as brightly as the stars above. The path twisted and wound deeper into the woods, revealing glimpses of wonders and challenges alike, ancient trees with faces carved by time, streams that sang with voices of old, and shadows that flickered like memories just out of reach. Tom's breath came steady, his eyes sharp and curious, ready to meet whatever the forest had in store. With the Guardian silently watching, a silent sentinel in the twilight, Tom embraced the unknown, stepping fully into the heart of his adventure. The way of trials stretched before Tom like a winding ribbon woven from twilight and starlight, each step leading deeper into the mysteries of the forest's heart. The glowing stone pulsed softly in his hand, a steady beacon of hope and courage guiding him through the growing shadows. As he moved forward, the trees seemed to lean closer, their ancient limbs whispering secrets in a language only the wind could understand. Suddenly, the path opened into a vast glade bathed in silver moonlight, where the air shimmered with an otherworldly glow. In the center stood a towering figure carved from living wooden vines, its eyes glowing with emerald fire, the Guardian of the trials. Its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "To pass, you must prove your heart's truth, your wit's sharpness, and your courage's flame. Face the tests with honesty, and the forest shall reveal its deepest secrets." Tom swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the challenge settle on his small shoulders, yet his spirit burned bright like a beacon in the night. With steady steps, he approached the Guardian, ready to face the trials that would shape his destiny and uncover the magic hidden beneath the ancient canopy. The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter as Tom drew nearer, casting emerald light that flickered and danced like tiny flames weaving through the silvered leaves of the glade. The air thickened with an almost tangible anticipation, as if the very breath of the forest held still, waiting for the smallest hero to take his first bold step into the ancient challenge. Around them, the towering trees stood silent and watchful, their gnarled limbs arching overhead like the vaulted ceilings of a grand cathedral carved from bark and leaf. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird mingled in a hushed symphony that seemed to honor the solemn moment. The Guardian's voice softened, carrying the weight and wisdom of countless seasons as it filled the glade with a deep, resonant calm. "The first trial is the trial of truth. Speak honestly, and the forest will guide you. Speak falsely, and you shall wander lost forever in twisting shadows where even light dares not tread." Tom's small chest rose and fell with a steady breath, his fingers tightening around the smooth, glowing crystal of clarity that pulsed gently against his palm, as if it too was alive with the magic of this sacred place. Though his stature was tiny, his spirit blazed brightly, steady and unwavering like a lantern's flame against the creeping dark. Suddenly, the air around him shimmered, and a cool mist began to rise from the mossy earth, curling upward in slow, swirling tendrils that twined and twisted like silken silver snakes through the dappled moonlight. The world itself seemed to shift and ripple, the trees and stones dissolving as the glade transformed into an otherworldly labyrinth of thorns and shimmering illusions that stretched endlessly in all directions. The pathway before Tom twisted and curled like the coils of a great serpent, its walls formed of living vines that pulsed faintly with an inner light, while shadows danced upon the thorns' sharp edges, whispering secrets meant only to confuse and confound. Each step was a question, every turn a test, not just of Tom's feet, but of his heart and mind. The labyrinth was alive, its magic woven thick with deception, designed to trap the unwary in webs of falsehood and doubt. But Tom's hand clutched the crystal of clarity tightly, its steady glow piercing the gloom like a beacon, cutting through the swirling fog of uncertainty and casting truth's pure light upon the twisted paths. Along the winding course, Tom encountered reflections of himself, mirror images born from the labyrinth's magic, their eyes shimmering with mocking glints. These reflections whispered doubts, fears, and lies in voices like the rustling leaves and crackling twigs, tempting him to stray from the path of honesty and into the shadowy maze of deceit. "You're too small, too weak. What could you possibly hope to achieve?" they hissed, their smiles sharp as thorns. Yet Tom's gaze was firm, his voice quiet but resolute as he spoke his truth aloud, dispelling each shadow with the radiant light of his own unyielding spirit. "I am small, but my heart is brave. I may be tiny, but my courage is vast." With every truthful word, the illusions faltered and dissolved, the thorns retracting like frightened snakes, and the tangled vines unwinding to reveal a clear, straight path. The labyrinth slowly melted away like morning mist under the sun's first rays, opening at last into a vast clearing bathed in pure, golden light that felt warm and welcoming as a mother's embrace. The air was crisp and sweet with the scent of wildflowers, and the gentle hum of the forest's life seemed to pulse in harmony with Tom's own racing heartbeat. From the shadows at the edge of the clearing, the guardian's deep voice echoed once more, now softened with a rare warmth and pride. "You have passed the trial of truth. Your heart is clear, your spirit unwavering. The forest sees your honesty and rewards your bravery. Prepare now for the next challenge, for the path ahead grows ever more perilous, but also rich with wonder and magic." Tom's lips curled into a determined smile as he stood tall, no longer just a tiny boy but a hero in the making, ready to face whatever trials awaited him beneath the watchful eyes of the ancient forest. The golden light of the clearing bathed Tom's small figure in a warm, gentle glow, as if the very sun itself had descended to bless his courage and truth. Around him, the forest seemed to breathe anew, the ancient trees whispering softly in a language older than time, their leaves shimmering like emerald flames flickering in a midnight breeze. The air was thick with the scent of pine and wildflowers, sweet and earthy, mingling with the faint trace of distant rain on mossy bark. The soft rustle of unseen creatures stirred the underbrush, their eyes gleaming with quiet curiosity, watching the tiny hero who had proven himself worthy of the forest's trust. Tom cradled the crystal of clarity close to his chest, feeling its gentle pulse like a heartbeat intertwined with his own. Every step forward was a promise, to the forest, to himself, and to the vast world of wonders yet to be discovered. The guardian's voice echoed through the clearing once more, a low rumble like distant thunder wrapped in the softness of twilight. "The next trial is the trial of courage. Beyond this glade lies a realm where shadows stretch long and dangers hide in the hush between the trees. To pass, you must face your deepest fears and prove that your heart can shine bright even when the night is darkest." Tom's breath caught in his throat, but his resolve held firm. He knew that courage was not the absence of fear, but the strength to move forward despite it. With a steady step, he turned toward the narrow path winding away from the clearing, where twilight gathered like a velvet cloak and the forest seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The trees grew denser here, their trunks thick and knotted, branches weaving a canopy so tight that only slivers of moonlight pierced the darkness. The air was cooler now, tinged with the sharp scent of damp earth and the faint metallic tang of hidden secrets. Each footfall echoed softly in the stillness, a rhythm of determination and hope. As Tom ventured deeper, the shadows seemed to flicker and shift, shapes dancing just beyond the edges of vision, glowing eyes that blinked open then vanished, whispers that curled through the leaves like a breeze carrying forgotten voices. His tiny heart pounded, a drumbeat of courage pounding against the walls of his chest, but he held the glowing crystal high, its light a steady beacon that pushed back the creeping darkness. Suddenly, from the shadows emerged a figure, a great bear with fur like molten gold, eyes deep pools of ancient wisdom and fierce protectiveness. The bear's growl rumbled through the forest like distant thunder, yet it did not advance with menace. Instead, it stood as a living testament to the wild's raw power, a guardian of the night's mysteries and trials. Tom met the bear's gaze without faltering, feeling the primal strength radiating from the majestic creature. In that moment, he understood. This was no enemy but a test, a living embodiment of the courage he must summon. Taking a deep breath, Tom stepped forward and spoke softly, his voice steady despite the fluttering nerves within. "I face you not as a foe, but as a seeker of courage. I am small, but my heart is mighty, and I will not turn away." The bear regarded him with eyes that seemed to look beyond flesh and bone, into the very soul of the tiny adventurer. Then, with a slow, deliberate nod, it lowered its massive head in a silent gesture of acceptance before turning and vanishing silently into the depths of the forest. Tom's chest swelled with a mixture of relief and newfound strength. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but he carried with him a light brighter than any shadow, a courage born not from size or strength, but from the unyielding spirit of a boy who dared to dream and to face the night with open eyes. The trial of courage had begun, and Tom's journey through the enchanted forest grew ever deeper and more wondrous beneath the watchful stars. The forest seemed to exhale as the great golden bear melted back into the shadows, leaving Tom standing alone beneath the heavy boughs that stitched a canopy overhead like an endless quilt of darkness and green. Yet, in the quiet that followed, the soft pulse of the crystal of clarity in his palm was a steady heartbeat against the rising silence, a lighthouse guiding him through the enveloping night. The path stretched onward, winding through thickets where the moonlight dared only to peek, casting ghostly silver fingers across mossy stones and tangled roots. Every step Tom took was a whisper on the forest floor, a delicate dance with shadows that flickered and shifted like restless spirits. Somewhere in the distance, an owl's mournful hoot echoed, a haunting melody that mingled with the rustling leaves and the gentle creak of ancient branches swaying in the night breeze. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, sweet pine, and the faint, mysterious perfume of night-blooming flowers that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Tom's eyes adjusted to the gloom, sharp and bright, flicking from one shadow to the next, reading the language of the forest with the keen attention of a born explorer. His breath came slow and steady, each inhale filling him with the wild perfume of the woods, each exhale mingling with the whispers of unseen creatures stirring in the underbrush. Suddenly, a shimmer flickered ahead, a soft, silvery light that danced between the trees like a living flame. Tom's heart quickened, and he moved toward it with cautious wonder, the glow weaving through the branches and beckoning him deeper. As he drew near, the light resolved into a delicate wisp, a fairy of the forest, her wings shimmering like spun glass, glinting with all the colors of dawn. Her eyes sparkled with mischief and kindness, and her voice was a tinkling melody that floated on the breeze. "Brave little one," she chimed, "you walk the path of courage well, but the night is long, and the forest's secrets are many. To continue, you must face the shadow's whisper, the fear that lives in silence and doubt. Only by embracing the darkness within can the light truly shine." Tom nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle deep inside him. The fairy's delicate fingers brushed the crystal in his hand, and suddenly the path before him shimmered and shifted, folding into a shadowed grove where the air grew thick with an eerie stillness. Here, the whispers of fear curled like smoke around his ears, threading through his thoughts with icy fingers. Faces made of mist flickered at the edge of his vision, and voices echoed doubts that clawed at his courage. But Tom stood firm, the glowing crystal a steady warmth in his palm, and he whispered to himself, "I am not my fears. I am stronger than the shadows that try to hold me." With each step he took forward through the shadow's whisper, the voices grew fainter, the mist dissolved, and the grove brightened as dawn's first light broke through the canopy, spilling golden warmth across the forest floor. The fairy's laughter rang clear and bright as she appeared once more, twirling like a leaf on the breeze. "Well done, little hero. Your courage has banished the darkest night within. The forest honors your heart." Tom smiled, feeling the surge of triumph ripple through him like the gentle rush of a spring brook. With the fairy's blessing and the crystal's steady glow, he stepped beyond the grove, ready to face whatever wonders and challenges awaited in the ever-deepening mystery of the enchanted forest. The forest's breath seemed to change as dawn's first light spilled softly through the thick canopy, painting the mossy floor with strokes of gold and emerald. The shadows that had clung to the edges of Tom's vision during the trial of courage now retreated, folding themselves back into the ancient roots and hidden hollows where they belonged. The air was alive with the gentle hum of awakening life, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by morning breeze, the trill of songbirds greeting the day, and the distant murmur of a stream weaving its silver thread through the undergrowth. Tom's footsteps felt lighter, each one a melody of hope and renewed strength as he moved deeper into the heart of the forest. The crystal of clarity pulsed gently at his side, a steady heartbeat of magic that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the woods. Ahead, the path opened into a sun-dappled glade where wildflowers swayed in quiet rhythm, their colors vivid as the brushstrokes of a master painter. At the center stood a great ancient tree, its massive trunk scarred by time yet brimming with life. Its roots spread wide, curling and twisting like the veins of the earth itself, and its branches reached high above, disappearing into the shimmering canopy. This was the tree of wisdom, whispered in forest lore to hold the knowledge of all who had ever walked beneath its boughs. As Tom approached, the air shimmered with a gentle magic, and a soft voice, ancient and soothing, filled the clearing. "Welcome, little seeker," it said. "You have shown truth and courage, and now you come for wisdom. To hear the forest's heart, you must listen beyond the words, beyond the leaves, and into the silence between." Tom settled beneath the sprawling roots, feeling the cool earth beneath him and the steady pulse of life all around. Closing his eyes, he breathed deeply, letting the whispers of the forest fill his senses. The murmur of sap rising within the tree, the distant call of an unseen bird, the faint rustle of creatures hidden in the underbrush. Time seemed to stretch and fold, the world fading until only the heartbeat of the forest remained, steady and eternal. In that sacred silence, visions blossomed in Tom's mind, a tapestry woven from moments of light and shadow, laughter and tears, strength and tenderness. He saw the miller's cottage, the gentle hands that had cared for him, and the rose from which he was born. He glimpsed the creatures he had met, the fox with eyes like polished amber, the stag with antlers that cradled the sky, and the golden bear whose presence had tested his courage. Each vision sang a story of connection, reminding him that even the smallest soul was part of the great, unfolding tapestry of life. As the visions faded, the ancient voice spoke again, softer now, like a breeze through leaves. "Wisdom is not a treasure to be held, but a light to be shared. Carry it with kindness, and your journey will be blessed." Opening his eyes, Tom felt a deep peace settle within him, a quiet strength born of understanding and love. The crystal at his side glowed warmly, a symbol of the journey he had undertaken and the promise of adventures yet to come. The sun's golden rays filtered through the thick canopy, casting a kaleidoscope of light and shadow across the forest floor, where delicate ferns unfurled like ancient scrolls and wildflowers nodded gently in the soft morning breeze. Tom Thumb, his spirit now steadied by the wisdom of the ancient tree, moved with renewed purpose along the winding path that snaked through the enchanted woods. Each step seemed to hum with the forest's own heartbeat, a rhythm woven from countless years of life, magic, and mystery. The crystal of clarity hung close at his side, its gentle glow a constant companion illuminating even the dimmest corners of his journey. As Tom ventured onward, the air grew thick with the rich scent of pine and earth, mingling with the faint sweetness of ripening berries hidden beneath tangled brambles. Birds flitted overhead, their songs weaving a joyful symphony that danced among the leaves like shimmering ribbons of sound. The forest was alive, not just with creatures but with stories whispered in the rustling of leaves and the babbling of brooks. Suddenly, the path opened into a sunlit clearing where an ancient stone circle stood, weathered monoliths etched with runes that glowed faintly with the echo of forgotten magic. This was the Circle of Seasons, a sacred place where the pulse of time itself was said to be strongest. Tom approached reverently, his small hands tracing the cool surface of one of the stones, feeling the hum of power beneath his fingertips. As he stepped into the circle's center, a warm breeze stirred the air, carrying with it voices soft as silk, weaving tales of seasons past and those yet to come. The stones began to glow brighter, casting an ethereal light that wrapped around Tom like a cloak of stars. The air shimmered as the forest's ancient magic unfolded, painting vivid visions before his eyes. The blossoming of spring's first flowers, the golden blaze of autumn leaves, the silent hush of winter's snow, and the warm embrace of summer's sun. These images flowed like a living tapestry, each moment a thread woven into the endless dance of life and change. The voices whispered lessons of patience, renewal, and the ever-turning wheel of existence. To walk the path of the forest is to understand the cycles of all things, they seem to say. Embrace change with an open heart, for it is the rhythm that guides the world. Tom's heart swelled with a deep sense of belonging, a knowing that he was part of something vast and eternal. The forest was not just a place of trials and magic, but a living story that he now carried within him, a story he would share with others through his deeds and dreams. As the light of the stone circle dimmed and the visions faded like morning mist, Tom felt the gentle brush of wings against his cheek. Looking up, he saw the forest sprite who had first welcomed him, her eyes sparkling with pride and affection. "You have learned well, little one," she said, her voice a melody woven from laughter and light. "The forest's secrets are many, but your heart holds the truest magic of all, the courage to seek, the wisdom to listen, and the love to carry it forward. With a final twirl of shimmering light, the sprite vanished into the dappled sunlight, leaving Tom standing alone yet never truly solitary. The path beyond the clearing beckoned, winding toward new horizons and adventures untold. With the crystal's gentle glow lighting his way and the forest's ancient wisdom echoing in his soul, Tom Thumb stepped forward, ready to continue his extraordinary journey through a world as vast and wondrous as his dreams. The forest seemed to breathe around Tom Thumb as he stepped beyond the sacred circle of seasons, the echoes of ancient magic still humming softly in the air like a distant lullaby. The path ahead twisted and wound through a thicket of towering oaks and whispering willows whose leaves shimmered silver in the gentle light of the rising sun. Each step felt like a step deeper into a world woven from the fabric of dreams and wonder, where every leaf and shadow held a secret waiting to be discovered. The crystal of clarity pulsed faintly in his pocket, its steady glow a comforting presence amidst the swirling tapestry of light and shade. As he journeyed, the forest around him seemed to come alive with quiet anticipation. The chirping of crickets blended with the distant call of a woodpecker, and the gentle rustle of the wind through the branches carried the faint scent of honey and wild thyme. The ground beneath his feet was soft with moss and fallen leaves, cushioned like a pillow to every small footfall. Ahead, a bubbling brook wound its way through the woods, its waters sparkling like scattered diamonds beneath the sun's warm gaze. Tom knelt beside the stream, dipping his tiny hands into the cool, clear water and letting it trickle through his fingers like liquid crystal. Around him, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the gentle ripple of the brook mingling with the rustle of leaves in a symphony of nature's quiet song. As he rested, a flutter of wings caught his eye, and turning, Tom saw a small family of dragonflies skimming over the water's surface, their iridescent wings catching the light in flashes of sapphire and emerald. They danced like fleeting sparks of magic, weaving through the air with a grace that seemed to echo the delicate balance of the forest itself. Feeling a renewed sense of wonder, Tom continued along the brook's edge until the trees opened onto a sunlit meadow carpeted with wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze like waves upon a golden sea. The air was sweet with the scent of blossoms, and butterflies flitted lazily from petal to petal, their wings painted with the soft hues of dawn. In the heart of the meadow stood a grand stag, his antlers crowned with blooms and moss, eyes wise and calm as the still forest pools. The stag regarded Tom with a knowing gaze, and a low, melodic voice filled the air, resonant as a distant bell. "You have walked far, little one, through trials and wonders. Here, the heart of the forest opens to you. Listen well, for the path you choose now will shape the tales yet told." Tom listened intently as the stag spoke of the delicate balance between light and shadow, of the eternal dance that wove life through the cycles of the earth. The stag's words were like the steady beat of a drum, grounding Tom in the vastness of the world while igniting a fire of purpose within him. With a gentle nod, the stag lowered his head in blessing, and Tom felt the warmth of ancient magic wrap around him like a protective cloak. He knew the journey ahead would be filled with both wonder and challenge, but his heart was steady and his spirit unyielding. With a final glance at the wise stag and the sunlit meadow, Tom Thumb stepped forward, his small feet carrying him toward the mysteries and marvels yet to be uncovered in the endless, enchanting embrace of the forest. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched like reaching fingers across the soft moss and wildflower-strewn meadow where Tom Thumb stood, his eyes bright with the fire of determination and wonder. The stag's blessing still warmed his heart like a glowing ember, a steady light against the gathering twilight. Around him, the forest began to hum with the evening's lullaby, the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by a cooling breeze, the distant call of night birds awakening, and the faint chorus of crickets tuning their strings beneath a velvet sky embroidered with the first twinkling stars. The path ahead wound into the twilight woods, where darkness folded like a velvet curtain between towering trunks and tangled roots. Tom's small figure moved with careful grace, the crystal of clarity nestled safely in his satchel, its soft pulse a beacon in the growing gloom. Every step was a whispered promise, a silent song of courage in a world that suddenly felt vast and mysterious beyond measure. The shadows deepened, thickening into shapes that flickered at the edges of his vision, twisting vines that seemed almost alive, leaves that shimmered with unseen magic, and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, watching, waiting. Yet Tom's heart remained steady, filled with the wisdom of the ancient tree, the courage of the golden bear, and the light of the stag's blessing. As he ventured deeper, the air grew cooler, scented with the sweet, haunting fragrance of night-blooming jasmine and the earth's soft breath after a distant rain. A gentle rustling from the underbrush caught his attention, and emerging slowly into the dim light was a creature both strange and wondrous. A silver fox with fur that gleamed like moonlight on water, eyes bright and knowing as ancient stars. The fox paused, its gaze locking with Tom's in a silent understanding, before it began to trot ahead, glancing back as if beckoning him to follow. Without hesitation, Tom followed, the forest path twisting and turning like a ribbon woven from shadow and light. Together they moved through thickets where the scent of moss and pine mingled with the faint sparkle of dew on spiderwebs strung like silver lace between branches. The fox led him to a clearing where the air shimmered with an almost tangible magic, and in the center stood a pool as still and clear as polished glass. Reflected in its depths was the vast, star-studded sky, a mirror to the universe itself. The fox stepped to the water's edge and, with a gentle nod, invited Tom to look into the pool. Peering in, Tom saw not just his own tiny reflection but visions of faraway lands, rolling hills dotted with golden fields, towering mountains crowned with snow, and vast oceans shimmering under the moon's tender gaze. The pool whispered secrets of the world beyond the forest, tales of adventure, friendship, and the endless dance of light and shadow. Tom's heart swelled with longing and hope, and he knew that though his journey through the enchanted woods was far from over, the path ahead would be lit by the magic he carried within, a spark as bright and unyielding as the stars reflected in the silent pool. The night deepened around Tom Thumb as he stood by the enchanted pool, the stars above shimmering like 1,000 tiny lanterns strewn across the velvet sky. The silver fox sat quietly beside him, its eyes gleaming with ancient wisdom and a hint of playful mischief. The air was thick with magic, alive with the murmurs of the forest, and the scent of wild herbs and damp earth mingled with the cool breath of night. Tom's gaze lingered on the pool's surface, where the shimmering visions of distant lands wove a tapestry of endless possibilities. Yet beneath the beauty lay a stirring challenge. The forest was not merely a place of wonder, but a realm where dreams could be tested and shadows could grow deep. As Tom reached out to touch the water, a ripple spread across the glassy surface, and suddenly, the pool's depths seemed to open like a gateway. Soft lights flickered beneath the surface, revealing a hidden underwater world teeming with creatures both strange and magnificent. Delicate water nymphs with hair like liquid silver danced among swaying lilies, their laughter like the tinkling of crystal bells. Fish with scales that glittered like molten gold darted through the clear waters, weaving between submerged ruins that spoke of forgotten times and lost magic. A sudden splash startled Tom, and from the depths emerged a regal figure, a majestic otter crowned with a circlet of woven reeds and sparkling gems. His eyes held the calm strength of the river itself, and his voice flowed like a gentle stream as he spoke. "Welcome, small traveler. You stand at the threshold between worlds, where water holds memories and secrets beyond the forest's green embrace. To journey forward, you must prove your heart is true by solving the riddle of the river's song." Tom listened intently as the otter recited the riddle, its words flowing like poetry. "I run without legs, I murmur without a voice, I dance without feet, and I vanish without a trace. What am I?" Tom thought deeply, the cool night air filling his lungs as his mind raced through the possibilities. Around him, the forest seemed to lean in, waiting, holding its breath. The fox nudged him gently, as if encouraging his courage. Then, like the first light of dawn breaking through the trees, the answer came clear and true. "You are the river," Tom whispered, his voice steady and sure. The otter smiled, a slow and approving smile that rippled like gentle waves. "Wisely spoken, little one. The river's song is a lesson in change and persistence, always moving, always shaping the land, yet never losing its own path. Remember this as you continue your quest." With a graceful leap, the otter dove back beneath the water, and the pool's surface calmed once more, the shimmering visions fading like mist. Tom felt a new strength settle within him, the lesson of the river's song weaving into his heart like a protective thread. As the silver fox rose and stretched, its fur catching the moonlight like spun silver, it beckoned Tom to follow deeper into the forest's mysteries. The path wound through ancient groves where towering trees seemed to whisper secrets of old, their bark etched with glowing runes that pulsed softly beneath Tom's fingertips as he brushed past. Fireflies flickered like tiny stars, lighting the way with a gentle, magical glow. Suddenly, the ground beneath Tom trembled softly, and from the shadows emerged a massive stag, its antlers now entwined with vines heavy with ripe, glowing fruit. Its eyes shone with an otherworldly light, and its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You carry the courage of the forest within you, Tom Thumb. But to truly become a guardian of this realm, you must face the trial of the whispering winds, a test of heart, wit, and spirit." Before Tom could respond, a swirling gust swept through the clearing, lifting leaves and petals into a dancing vortex of color and sound. The winds seemed to carry voices, soft whispers of friends and foes, challenges and guidance, memories and dreams, all swirling around him like a living song. To pass this trial, Tom would need to listen deeply, to hear not just the words but the meanings beneath, and to trust the voice of his own heart above all. With a determined nod, Tom stepped into the vortex, ready to embrace the swirling winds and the truths they carried, knowing that each challenge brought him closer to the magic that pulsed at the very heart of the enchanted forest and the hero he was destined to become. The whirlwind of the whispering winds surrounded Tom Thumb like a living storm, swirling leaves, petals, and soft whispers that wove through the air like strands of silver thread caught in a tempest. Each voice seemed to carry a piece of a puzzle, fragments of laughter and sorrow, warnings and encouragement, memories of those who had walked the forest paths long before him. The winds spoke not just in words but in feelings, echoes of courage, doubt, hope, and fear that rose and fell like a symphony beneath the swirling gale. Tom closed his eyes, letting the voices wash over him, focusing not on the noise but on the quiet truth beneath, the steady beat of his own heart, calm and sure amid the storm. Images danced behind his eyelids, a roaring fire tempered by gentle embers, a mighty river flowing around stones worn smooth by time, a tiny seed pushing through soil toward the sun. These were the lessons hidden in the wind's song: strength tempered by kindness, persistence in the face of obstacles, and the quiet power of hope. As the vortex slowly began to calm, Tom opened his eyes to find himself standing in a clearing bathed in the silver light of the full moon. The air was cool and still, and the scent of jasmine and pine hung sweetly around him. Before him stood an ancient tree, its bark twisted and knotted with the stories of centuries, its roots deep and wide like the veins of the earth itself. Carved into the trunk were symbols that pulsed softly with a gentle glow, the language of the forest, old as time and full of secrets. Tom reached out and pressed his small hand against the tree's rough surface, feeling a warmth that spread from the bark into his fingertips and radiated through his whole being. The tree seemed to breathe beneath his touch, alive with the memory of countless seasons, and a deep voice resonated in his mind, clear and steady like a heartbeat. "You have passed the trial of the winds, little one. Your heart listens not only to the voices of the past but to the quiet call of the future. Remember that strength without wisdom is like a flame without light, dangerous and fleeting. Walk your path with both courage and care." The silver fox appeared again at Tom's side, its eyes shining with pride and a touch of mischief. It nuzzled his hand gently before darting off along a hidden path lined with glowing mushrooms that lit their way like stars fallen to earth. Tom followed, the forest around him alive with magic and mystery. The path led him to a sparkling waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear pool surrounded by stones that glowed with a soft inner light. The sound of the water was like music, a soothing melody that spoke of renewal and transformation. As Tom approached, he noticed a circle of smooth stones arranged carefully around the pool, each etched with symbols of the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. The air hummed with power, and Tom understood that this place was a nexus of ancient magic, a sacred space where the forces of nature converged in harmony. Suddenly, a gentle voice broke the silence, a voice as soft and pure as a mountain stream. From behind the waterfall stepped a figure cloaked in shimmering robes woven from threads of light and shadow. Her eyes sparkled with the wisdom of ages, and her smile held the warmth of the sun. "Welcome, Tom Thumb," she said, her voice like a gentle breeze. "I am Elira, the keeper of the elements. Your journey has brought you here to learn the balance that holds the world together. To protect the forest and all who dwell within it, you must understand the harmony of earth, air, fire, and water." Tom listened intently as Elira began to teach him, her words painting vivid pictures of the elements' power and their delicate dance that sustained life itself. She showed him how to feel the heartbeat of the earth beneath his feet, to hear the whispers of the wind through the trees, to sense the flicker of flame's warmth even in the coldest night, and to find the flowing strength of water in every stream and river. With each lesson, Tom felt his connection to the forest deepen, the magic within him growing stronger and more alive. As Elira's teachings unfolded, the stars above seemed to pulse in time with the rhythm of the elements, and the forest sang a song of balance and renewal. Tom knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges and wonders, but with the wisdom of the elements and the courage in his heart, he was ready to face whatever lay beyond the horizon. The moon hung high and full above the ancient forest, casting a silver glow over every leaf, stone, and ripple in the stream as Tom Thumb stood at the edge of the sacred pool. The lessons of the elements still shimmered in his mind like the aftertaste of a sweet, strange fruit, each truth deep and enduring, each one a seed planted in the garden of his heart. Elira, the keeper of the elements, stepped closer, her robe flowing like liquid starlight, and she placed a hand lightly on Tom's tiny shoulder. "Your journey is not just a path through the forest, little one," she said softly, her voice carrying the hush of midnight and the hum of the earth. "It is a thread in the great tapestry of all things. You have faced truth, listened to the winds, and learned the balance of the world. Now, one final gift awaits." She lifted her other hand, and the waters of the pool began to rise, forming a tall column of crystal droplets that spun slowly in the moonlight, each droplet containing tiny scenes: a fox racing through snow, a seed sprouting into a tree, a storm breaking over a sunlit sea. Tom reached out, his small fingers trembling, and the column collapsed gently into a single sphere of glowing water that floated toward him, warm and cool all at once. "This is the heart of the forest," Elira explained, her eyes alight with both joy and solemnity. "It will rest within you, unseen but ever present, guiding your steps and reminding you that even the smallest among us can hold great power if they walk with kindness." The sphere dissolved into Tom's chest, sending a surge of warmth through his whole being, and for a moment he swore he could hear every tree, bird, and stream in the forest speaking to him all at once, their voices woven into a song of life itself. Elira smiled and stepped back, her form already beginning to fade into the moonlight. "Go now, Tom Thumb," she said, her voice like the last note of a lullaby, "for your story has only just begun, and there are many who will need the courage you carry." The silver fox appeared again, bounding ahead along a narrow path that wound out of the sacred glade, its tail glowing like a lantern in the night. Tom followed without hesitation, the air crisp and clean, the stars above like an audience watching the smallest hero stride forward. The forest seemed larger now, not because it had grown, but because Tom saw it with new eyes, every shadow alive with possibility, every rustle of leaves a whisper of adventure to come. As he disappeared into the depths of the woods, the moon's light followed him, laying a silver road at his feet, and somewhere far above, the wind carried his name like a promise, scattering it across the sleeping world where dreams and tales are born. And so, though Tom Thumb's feet were small and his frame slight, his heart carried the weight and wonder of all he had seen and endured. The whispering trees, the trials of truth, the shifting winds, the hidden voices of water, the fierce warmth of fire, and the quiet wisdom of stone, each had left an indelible mark upon his soul, like the threads of a grand tapestry woven by unseen hands. He had begun his journey as a boy simply seeking a place in the world, but he returned from it as something more, a keeper of stories, a guardian of balance, and a living proof that courage can bloom in the most unlikely of hearts. As he walked beneath the silvered canopy, he thought of the friends who had guided him, the fox with its knowing eyes, Elira with her starlit robe, and even the ancient guardians whose challenges had shaped him. Their voices lingered in his memory, not as echoes of the past, but as companions who would travel with him in spirit for as long as his story was told. Villages would speak his name with fondness, children would lean closer by the hearth to hear the tale, and wanderers would take heart knowing that the forest itself had once chosen a hero no bigger than a sparrow. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the living woods, the paths he had walked still glowed faintly in moonlight, as if the land itself remembered and honored the tiny traveler who had proven that size was no measure of strength. The silver fox still roamed ahead, its tail gleaming like a comet's trail, leading new dreamers toward adventures of their own. The wind carried his name across valleys and rivers, threading it into lullabies, campfire songs, and the rustling of leaves, ensuring that Tom Thumb would never truly vanish from the world he had served. Welcome to the Sleepy Scribe. Your endless internet wandering has brought you here, and hopefully you can finally sleep to today's story, Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, before we begin, comment where you are listening from, and how late it is where you are. It is so very interesting to see how far and wide people come to listen. Lastly, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, it would be very appreciated. Now, let us begin. In a small thatched cottage that leaned ever so slightly to one side, as though it had been bowing politely to the wind for decades, there lived a boy named Jack and his widowed mother. The cottage was tucked at the far edge of a village where the cobblestone road grew tired and crumbled into a path of mud and grass, and beyond it stretched the rolling hills like giant green waves, their crests dotted with patches of wildflowers that swayed as though whispering secrets to the breeze. Jack was the sort of boy whose curiosity was both a blessing and a curse. His mind was always wandering into places where his feet had not yet dared to go, and his hands had a habit of fiddling with anything within reach, whether it was a loose nail on the doorframe, a curious beetle crossing the path, or the edge of a loaf of bread cooling on the windowsill. His mother loved him dearly, but she often sighed at his lack of sense. "Dreams don't fill empty bellies, Jack," she would say, as she kneaded dough with a rhythmic thump that matched the beat of her patience wearing thin. They were not wealthy, nor even comfortably poor. They had slipped into the kind of poverty that made every day a calculation, every meal a question. Their only real possession of value was a milk cow named Bess, a gentle creature with eyes the color of warm chestnuts and a slow, thoughtful way of chewing as if each bite of grass required careful philosophical consideration. Bess had been with them for as long as Jack could remember. Her milk had been their main source of nourishment, and the small coins they earned from selling it kept them afloat like a rickety raft on a restless sea. But one spring, the grass turned patchy, rain came too little, and Bess's milk trickled to almost nothing. Jack's mother grew quiet in those days, her hands working harder but her eyes growing dimmer, until one morning she told Jack with a heavy sigh that Bess must be sold at the market. Jack, though not thrilled at the idea of losing the old cow, puffed out his chest and assured her he would fetch the best price. "Don't let anyone cheat you," she warned, pointing a flour-dusted finger at him. "And don't dawdle. The sooner you return, the sooner we can have bread on the table." Jack grinned, a grin full of optimism that often arrived before his sense of caution, and set off with Bess's rope in hand. The road to the market was long enough to invite daydreams, and Jack's mind wandered with every step. The fields whispered with the rustle of mice in the grass, the air smelled faintly of honey from the hedgerow blossoms, and Bess plodded beside him, occasionally flicking her tail with an air of resigned dignity. Halfway to the market, as the path curved around a great oak tree with roots that rose like sleeping dragons from the earth, Jack encountered a man unlike any he had ever seen. He was neither young nor old, with a beard that looked as though it had been carved from frost and eyes that seemed to reflect the shifting colors of the sky. His cloak was a patchwork of many fabrics, silks and wools, velvets and linens, stitched together in a pattern that made no sense but was oddly pleasing to look at, as though the wind itself had chosen the pieces. "Good day to you, young traveler," the man said in a voice that carried a strange music, as if each word were balancing on the edge of a song. "And good day to you, sir," Jack replied, standing a little straighter, for something about the man demanded a certain respect. The man's eyes drifted to Bess, who had stopped to nibble on a stubborn tuft of grass. "Fine animal you have there," he remarked. "On your way to sell her?" Jack nodded. "At the market. We need the coin for food." The man tilted his head thoughtfully. "Coin? But coins are cold things, easily lost, easily spent. What if I offered you something warmer, something far more valuable than gold or silver?" Jack blinked. "And what would that be?" The man reached into his cloak and drew out his hand, in which lay 5 beans. They were small, yet each seemed to glow faintly, as if they held a drop of starlight inside. "Magic beans," the man said with a small smile. "Plant them, and wonders will follow." Jack, of course, had heard stories of magic beans before, told by children around the fire with all the wildness of rumor. But this man's tone was so certain, his gaze so steady, that a part of Jack wanted to believe. Still, another part, echoing his mother's warning, whispered that this could be folly. "What kind of wonders?" Jack asked, narrowing his eyes. The man chuckled softly. "The kind that change the course of your life forever. But I will not tell you more. Wonders are best discovered, not described. I offer these in trade for your cow." Jack hesitated, glancing at Bess, who looked back at him with an expression that could almost be read as, "Don't you dare." But the beans seemed to hum in the man's palm, and something in that sound stirred Jack's restless heart. Without fully deciding, and yet somehow already decided, Jack reached for the beans. The man's smile deepened, and he handed them over, taking Bess's rope in return. "Plant them tonight, and do not wait for the morning," he said. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leading Bess along the path. Jack stood there for a moment, the weight of the beans in his hand far lighter than the weight of what he had just done. As he started back toward home, he imagined fields of towering flowers, rivers of gold, castles in the clouds. But when his mother saw the beans in his hand, her reaction was rather less enchanted. "Beans?" she cried, her voice rising in a tone Jack had learned to fear. "You traded our cow for beans." Jack tried to explain about the man and the promise of wonders, but his mother's fury was like a storm with no shelter. She snatched the beans from his hand and flung them out the open window, where they vanished into the dark soil of the garden. "Go to bed, Jack, and pray we don't starve." Jack lay awake that night, staring at the rafters, wondering whether he had made the biggest mistake of his life or the beginning of something extraordinary. He did not know that, outside, where the beans had fallen, the earth was already beginning to stir. Jack awoke the next morning to a strange hush, as if the world were holding its breath, waiting for him to notice something. For a moment, he thought it might have been the absence of his mother's usual clattering in the kitchen, but then he realized the light coming through the window was different, not the warm gold of dawn, but a softer, green-tinged glow that made the air feel almost enchanted. Pushing aside the threadbare blanket, he rushed to the window and stopped dead, his breath catching in his throat. Where the beans had landed in the garden, a single stalk had shot up overnight, not merely a sprout or sapling, but a colossal, twisting beanstalk that seemed to defy every law of nature. Its stem was as thick as the great oak at the village square, and it rose into the sky in a spiraling dance of vibrant green, its leaves as large as dinner plates and glistening with dew that shimmered like tiny prisms. The stalk stretched so high that Jack's neck ached from trying to see its top, which vanished into a bank of pearly clouds that drifted lazily above. The air around it was alive with the hum of unseen energy, and a faint, sweet fragrance drifted down from somewhere far above, like honey mixed with the scent of summer rain. His mother came up behind him, still tying her apron, and froze when she saw it. "Saints preserve us," she whispered, her voice trembling between awe and disbelief. "What in the name of—" But before she could finish, Jack was already pulling on his boots, his eyes alight with the reckless gleam of someone who had been handed a challenge too tempting to resist. "I'm going up," he announced. "Up," she sputtered. "Up where? That thing could lead to anywhere. It could be dangerous." Jack grinned, the same grin he'd worn when he first saw the beans. "Exactly." He grabbed a loaf of bread from the table, stuffed it into his satchel, and strode out the door before his mother could stop him. The beanstalk was even more magnificent up close, its surface smooth but with ridges and tendrils that formed perfect handholds, as if it had been designed for climbing. Jack took his first grip and hoisted himself up, the cool morning air rushing around him. Higher and higher he climbed, passing leaves that were alive with darting insects of colors he had never seen before, brilliant blues and shimmering golds that caught the light like jewels. Birds with feathers like flames flitted between the branches, their songs weaving strange and beautiful melodies that seemed to urge him onward. The ground fell away beneath him, the village shrinking until it looked like a child's toy, and still he climbed. Clouds drifted past, their mist cool against his skin, tasting faintly of fresh water and something sweeter, like spun sugar. The air grew thinner, yet strangely easier to breathe, as if it carried not just oxygen but a whisper of magic. At last, Jack's hand reached a thick, curling vine that arched over a flat, shimmering surface, and he pulled himself up, and gasped. He stood at the edge of a vast land above the clouds, where the ground was covered in lush, emerald grass that swayed though no wind stirred. Flowers as tall as a man nodded lazily in the sunshine, their petals glowing faintly, and in the distance, Jack saw a castle unlike any on earth. Its towers were so high they seemed to pierce the heavens, each capped with a roof of gold that caught the sun and sent beams of light spilling across the land. The walls were carved from pale stone, so smooth they reflected the clouds like a mirror, and each gate was guarded by statues of creatures Jack could not name, half lion, half eagle, with wings spread wide. Yet even from here, Jack could see movement near the castle, a great shadow shifting, far too large to be any ordinary man. His curiosity ignited, he began walking toward it, the ground beneath him springy as though it were made for running. On his way, he passed streams of crystal-clear water that sang over beds of shimmering pebbles, and orchards heavy with fruit that glistened like polished gems, apples the size of pumpkins, cherries as big as plums. Jack plucked one golden apple and bit into it. The flavor burst across his tongue, sweeter than anything he had ever tasted, leaving a warm glow in his chest. He laughed aloud, the sound ringing strangely in this magical air. But as he drew nearer to the castle, The air seemed to grow heavier, charged with something ancient and dangerous. The gates towered above him, and beside them lay a footprint pressed into the earth, so large Jack could have curled up and slept in it. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled, but instead of turning back, he felt an odd thrill run through him. Whatever made that footprint was here, and Jack's instincts told him that this was where his wonders truly began. He slipped through a gap in the gate just wide enough for someone his size, finding himself in a courtyard paved with white stone that gleamed like moonlight. Far above, a deep rumble echoed, a sound too slow to be thunder, too deliberate to be anything but footsteps. Somewhere inside that castle, something immense was moving. Jack pressed himself against the cool stone of the courtyard wall, his heart thudding in his chest like a drum in a festival parade. The sound of those massive footsteps rolled through the air again, shaking the ground beneath his feet and sending little vibrations up his legs. Each step was deliberate, unhurried, and full of weight, as though whoever, whatever, was walking knew there was no creature alive who could challenge it. Above him, great banners hung from the towering castle walls, each embroidered with strange sigils of gold thread, swirling patterns that seemed almost to move when Jack's eyes lingered too long. They depicted scenes of colossal figures striding across landscapes dotted with tiny villages, of winged beasts chained to marble pillars, and of treasures piled higher than mountains. Jack's imagination, always quick to run wild, began weaving stories from the images, tales of ancient giants ruling over realms hidden from mortal eyes. The courtyard smelled faintly of warm bread and roasted meat, a scent that curled around him like a beckoning finger. His stomach growled loudly in betrayal, making him wince, but the castle door, an immense slab of carved wood banded with iron, stood slightly ajar, letting out a shaft of warm light. Curiosity won over caution. He slipped inside, moving silently across the polished floor, his footsteps muffled by a rug woven with intricate patterns that seemed to ripple as though stirred by an invisible breeze. The interior was vast beyond imagining, the ceiling lost in shadow and the walls lined with shelves stacked not with books but with objects. Goblets the size of cauldrons, necklaces that would take a dozen men to lift, coins so large and heavy they could crush a wheelbarrow. A fireplace big enough to hold Jack's entire cottage roared at the far end of the hall, the flames casting flickering light over a table that stretched longer than the main road of Jack's village. At the head of the table sat a man, or something shaped like a man, but magnified 100 times over. The giant was massive, with a beard like a thicket of brambles streaked with silver, and hair the color of storm clouds tumbling down over shoulders broad enough to carry a barn. His clothes were rough spun but rich in texture, dyed in deep reds and browns, and his boots looked as though they had been carved from single blocks of oak. Before him sat a roasted ox, turning slowly on a spit that could have doubled as a bridge beam. He tore at the meat with hands the size of wagon wheels, chewing thoughtfully as his eyes, grey and sharp as whetted steel, scanned the hall. "Fee!" he rumbled, and the sound of that single syllable vibrated through Jack's bones like the strike of a great bell. "Fee, fur, fum." The words rolled from his lips like distant thunder, each one heavy with menace. Jack froze, the hair on his arms rising. The giant sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring. "I smell the blood of an Englishman," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Jack ducked behind a golden pitcher taller than himself, pressing into the shadows, hardly daring to breathe. The giant rose to his feet, the ground trembling with the shift of his weight, and prowled toward the center of the hall, his heavy boots striking the stone like drumbeats. "Be he alive or be he dead," the giant muttered, "I'll grind his bones to make my bread." Jack's fingers gripped the edge of the pitcher so tightly that his knuckles ached, but his mind was racing faster than his fear. He had not climbed that beanstalk for nothing. He had come for adventure, and maybe, if luck favored him, something that could change his life and his mother's forever. The giant's gaze swept over the room once more, lingering for a heartbeat too long in Jack's direction. But then, as if convinced it had been only his imagination, he turned back to his table. Jack risked a quick glance around the room and spotted something glittering on a shelf not far from him. A harp, carved of pale wood and strung with golden strings that seemed to hum softly, as though whispering to themselves. Beside it sat a small hen, her feathers a deep, burnished gold, calmly preening under the watchful light of a nearby torch. Jack's heart leapt. He had heard old tales in his village about a golden hen that could lay eggs of pure gold, and a harp that could sing sweeter than any bard. If even one of those legends was true, it would mean the end of hunger and poverty for him and his mother. But to get them, he would have to cross the open hall, within arm's reach of the giant. He drew in a slow breath, trying to quiet the pounding in his ears. The moment had to be chosen carefully, like a fox waiting for the hound to turn its head. Then, from somewhere in the depths of the castle, a deep chime rang out, perhaps a bell marking the hour, and the giant turned away, lumbering toward a massive door at the far end of the hall. Jack seized his chance. He darted from his hiding place, his feet silent on the thick rug, and made for the shelf. The harp gave a soft, curious note as his hands touched it, almost as if greeting him. The hen cocked her head but did not move, her eyes bright and knowing. Jack cradled both treasures against his chest, marveling at their weight and warmth. But before he could take more than a step back toward the door, a voice like rolling thunder shook the air. "Who's there?" Jack's blood turned to ice at the sound, and for a heartbeat he could not move. The giant's shadow loomed against the far wall, stretching toward him like the grasp of some dark, living thing. Slowly, the huge figure turned, and Jack saw the eyes, those cold, grey, storm-tossed eyes, fixed directly on him. They were sharp as sword points now, narrowing in recognition. "Thief!" the giant roared, and the words seemed to slam against the walls, bouncing back in echoes that made the harp in Jack's arms shiver with a trembling chord. The hen gave a startled squawk, flapping its golden wings just once before settling again, her weight surprisingly heavy for such a small creature. Jack's legs finally obeyed him, and he spun on his heel, bolting for the doorway. His boots slid slightly on the polished floor, and behind him came the terrifying pounding of those enormous feet. It was like being chased by a collapsing building, each step of the giant sending vibrations up Jack's spine and rattling his teeth. The harp let out a plaintive, almost frightened melody, its strings resonating with each jolt as if urging him to run faster. "Stop, little worm," the giant bellowed, and his voice was so loud it rattled the suits of armor lining the hall, their empty visors seeming to watch Jack's desperate flight. Jack darted through the half-open door and into the courtyard, the golden hen's feathers brushing his chin and the harp clutched tight against his side. The cool night air hit his face, sharp with the smell of dew and distant rain, but he didn't dare slow down to savor it. Behind him, the massive door burst open with a crack of splintering wood, and the giant came barreling after him, his huge strides eating up the ground with terrifying speed. Jack's eyes darted to the beanstalk, its massive green coils swaying slightly in the wind, its leaves glinting faintly in the moonlight like polished jade. It seemed impossibly far away now, a rope to safety dangling from the very clouds, but the distance between him and the giant was shrinking with each second. His lungs burned, his legs screamed in protest, but the thought of those colossal hands wrapping around him drove him forward. The harp's song changed, now playing quick, urgent notes that matched the pounding of Jack's heart, as if it too understood the peril they were in. Jack reached the base of the beanstalk and without hesitation began to climb, his hands and feet moving in a frantic rhythm. The golden hen squawked again, feathers ruffling, and Jack had to tuck her securely under one arm while still gripping the thick vines with the other. The beanstalk swayed beneath him, the wind carrying the faint scent of clouds and something wild and green. From below came the roar of the giant, so loud that leaves trembled and vines quivered. Jack risked a glance down and wished he hadn't. The giant had reached the base and was already beginning to climb, his enormous fingers curling easily around the thick vines, pulling himself upward with terrifying ease. "You can't outrun me, boy," the giant thundered, his voice rolling through the night like distant cannon fire. Jack's breath came in ragged gasps, his arms aching, but he climbed faster, the muscles in his legs burning as though he had fire in his veins. The world below shrank rapidly, the castle courtyard becoming no more than a patchwork of stone and grass, the giant's face a grim, furious mask rising ever closer. The harp's strings seemed to blaze with sound now, its melody fierce and defiant, while the hen's golden feathers gleamed in the moonlight like a talisman against fear. Above him, the clouds parted slightly, revealing the silvery glow of the moon, which seemed to beckon him higher, whispering of freedom. Jack gritted his teeth and pushed on, the wind tugging at his hair and stinging his eyes. But as he climbed, he realized with a cold shock that the giant was gaining. The huge hands reached up, stretching toward his boots, the giant's breath hot and smelling faintly of roasted meat and smoke. Jack's mind raced. He could climb until dawn and still be caught if he didn't find another way. Then he remembered his axe. It was waiting at the base of the beanstalk in his own world, right where he had left it after his first climb. A wild, desperate idea took root. He would have to get there before the giant did, and he would have only seconds to act. With renewed determination, he climbed faster, the night around him blurring into streaks of green vine, silver moonlight, and shadow. The hen clucked softly now, as if sensing his plan, while the harp played a steady, driving rhythm like the beat of a war drum. Below, the giant let out a frustrated roar that rattled the very beanstalk, but Jack did not slow. The cool air grew warmer as he neared the cloud's edge, and then, in a rush, he was through, sliding down into the world he knew. The village field stretched out before him, silent and bathed in moonlight, the grass shimmering with dew. His cottage stood in the distance, small and safe-looking, but Jack had no time to think of home. He jumped the last few feet to the ground, landing hard but steady, and sprinted for the axe leaning against a nearby stump. Behind him, the beanstalk shook violently, the giant's massive form descending like a thundercloud made flesh. Jack's fingers closed around the axe handle, its worn wood fitting perfectly into his grip. The harp's music swelled, and the hen gave a loud, urgent cry. The ground trembled. The giant's boots were already visible through the leaves above. Jack lifted the axe. With a deep breath that filled his chest like a bellows, Jack swung the axe with every ounce of strength he had. The blade bit into the beanstalk with a thick, meaty crack, sending a shudder up the green tower that rattled its leaves like wind in a forest. The vine was thicker than a man's torso, slick with dew, and its sap oozed where the axe struck, smelling faintly of fresh-cut grass and some strange sweetness, almost like honey. Jack yanked the blade free and swung again, his muscles screaming in protest, his hands raw from the rough handle, but he didn't stop. Above him, the giant's furious voice shook the night. "You dare!" he bellowed, and Jack could feel the vibrations in his ribs. Through the thick foliage, he caught flashes of the giant's enormous hands clawing downward, each finger as long as Jack's arm, reaching for him. The harp strings sang out a fast, frantic tune now, notes spilling into the air like sparks from a fire. The hen clucked wildly in Jack's arm, its golden feathers catching the moonlight in blinding flashes, as if trying to scare off the danger with brilliance alone. Another swing, another sharp crack, and the beanstalk groaned deeply, as though it were a living creature pleading not to fall. Leaves shook loose and spiraled toward the earth, their shadows dancing over Jack's face. He risked a glance upward and saw the giant's face breaking through the leaves, huge, twisted with rage, and close enough now that Jack could see the deep creases in his weathered skin, the crooked yellow teeth grinding together, and the wild glint in those stormy eyes. "I'll grind your bones," the giant roared, his voice a hammer blow in the night. Jack's heart hammered back, faster, harder, and with a final roar of his own, he swung again. The axe buried itself deep, and the beanstalk shivered like it had been struck by lightning. Sap sprayed, slicking his hands, but he pulled the axe free and struck once more, the force of it ringing up his arms. There was a loud, splintering crack, deeper and louder than before, and the vine lurched under the giant's massive weight. The beanstalk tilted suddenly, a slow, groaning lean that made Jack's stomach twist. Leaves flew like startled birds, and the air filled with the sound of tearing fibers. The giant's hands clawed at the vines, trying to steady himself, but his size made him clumsy. The entire stalk swayed like a ship in a storm, and then, with a final, thunderous snap, it gave way. The giant's roar turned into a howl of shock as he fell, arms flailing, his body plummeting through the night like a falling boulder. He crashed into the earth with an impact that sent a tremor racing through the ground, toppling fence posts and rattling the shutters on Jack's cottage. Dust and dirt exploded into the air, briefly hiding the massive, motionless form from sight. Jack stood there, panting, the axe still in his hands, his arms shaking so violently he could barely keep his grip. The harp's music shifted into something soft and triumphant, like a quiet cheer after a long battle, and the golden hen tucked her head beneath her wing as if the world had suddenly grown peaceful again. Slowly, the dust settled, revealing the giant sprawled across the field, his great limbs slack, his head turned to one side. He looked almost like a mountain that had finally crumbled, his once fearsome form nothing more than a heap of stone and shadow in the moonlight. The beanstalk lay in pieces around him, its green coils already wilting, leaves curling as if mourning their fall from the clouds. Jack's chest heaved with each breath, his body aching, but a strange stillness filled the night now. He looked at the harp, its carved face serene, the strings glowing faintly as if lit from within. The golden hen opened one eye and gave him a curious, approving glance. He could almost swear they both understood what had just happened, that the long chase, the towering danger, had ended here in this quiet field. Yet, deep inside, Jack felt something else stir. He knew this was not just the end of a climb, but the beginning of a different kind of life. Riches could buy comfort, yes, but they could also invite envy, greed, and trouble. And somewhere far above, in that strange kingdom beyond the clouds, there was now an empty castle filled with treasures, guarded only by silence. He wondered, for just a moment, if he would ever see it again, or if, perhaps, one day another curious soul might plant a seed and find themselves on a journey not unlike his own. But for now, Jack turned toward home, his prize tucked under his arms, the harp's gentle tune leading him forward like a lullaby. The moon hung low over the fields, and the scent of crushed leaves and fresh sap lingered in the air. In the distance, the first faint light of dawn touched the horizon, promising a new day that would carry his story into the whispers and songs of the village for years to come. The morning light spilled over the horizon like warm honey, casting a golden glow across the rolling fields where Jack's cottage stood quietly amidst the dew-kissed grass. The air was alive with the soft chirping of birds waking from their slumber, their melodies weaving through the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by a breeze that carried the scent of fresh earth and blooming wildflowers. Jack's breath still came in slow, steady waves as he walked toward his humble home, the harp tucked carefully under one arm and the golden hen nestled safely beneath the other. His heart was full, not just with the treasures he had won, but with the memories of a night that had changed everything. The village was just beginning to stir. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the faint clatter of wooden carts and morning chatter drifted through the air like threads in a tapestry. Children scampered along dirt paths, their laughter bubbling up like a clear stream, while neighbors exchanged nods and greetings, the rhythm of simple lives unfolding in the dawn's soft embrace. As Jack approached, his mother came out onto the porch, her eyes wide with a mixture of worry and relief. "Jack, where have you been all night?" she called, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf. He smiled, the weight of his adventure lifting slightly in the warmth of her gaze. "Mother, I've brought home gifts that will change our lives," he said, his voice steady but filled with wonder. "The harp sings like the wind, and the hen lays golden eggs." Her hands trembled as she reached out to touch the feathers, marveling at the radiant glow that seemed to pulse softly beneath her fingers. The village soon gathered around, drawn by tales of Jack's climb to the sky and the giant who had fallen like a mountain toppled by thunder. Old men rubbed their beards thoughtfully, imagining the towering castle beyond the clouds, while the children hung on every word, eyes wide with dreams of adventure and magic. Jack's father, a man weathered by years of hard work but softened by pride, clapped him on the shoulder. "You've done more than bring back treasures, son. You've brought hope." Days passed in a blur of new beginnings. The golden hen's eggs brought prosperity, easing the family's worries, and the harp's melodies filled the cottage with music that soothed even the weariest souls. But Jack knew that life was never quite as simple as stories made it seem. The riches brought attention, some of it welcome, some less so, and Jack felt the stirrings of something else, the restless call of the unknown, the promise of more beyond the fields he had always known. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, Jack sat by the fire, the harp resting gently on his lap. The hen pecked softly at some crumbs nearby, her golden feathers catching the flickering light like embers. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "You've brought hope." But Jack knew the world was vast and full of shadows as well as light. He wondered what other mysteries waited beyond the next horizon, what tales had yet to be told, what giants still lingered in hidden places. Outside, the stars began to twinkle, shy and steady, as if watching over the boy who had dared to climb beyond the clouds. And in the quiet, beneath the vast sky, Jack felt a spark kindle, a flame of courage and curiosity that would carry him forward, wherever the road might lead. The village settled into a gentle rhythm under the soft glow of twilight, the sky painted with streaks of lavender and gold that melted slowly into the deepening indigo of night. Lanterns flickered to life in windows and doorways, casting pools of warm light that danced like fireflies against the cool shadows. Jack sat on the porch steps, the golden hen nestled comfortably beside him, while the harp rested silently at his feet. His eyes traced the familiar outlines of the hills and fields, yet his thoughts wandered far beyond, back to the towering Beanstalk, the giant's castle in the clouds, and the vast world that stretched out like an uncharted map waiting to be explored. Though his feet were firmly planted on the soft earth of home, his spirit hummed with a restless energy, a yearning for adventure that pulsed like the steady beat of a distant drum. The village elders often told stories of heroes and giants, of magic hidden in plain sight, but Jack knew from experience that there was truth woven through every tale, truth that whispered on the wind, that shimmered in the leaves, and that called to those brave enough to listen. The golden hen, now settled and content, occasionally let out a soft cluck, her feathers catching the lantern light and gleaming like molten gold. She had become more than a symbol of fortune. She was a reminder that even the smallest among us could hold the greatest treasures within. The harp, silent now, had sung songs that stirred the heart and banished fear, its melodies a thread connecting Jack to the world beyond the clouds. A cool breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant rain. Jack breathed it in deeply, feeling the night enfold him like a comforting cloak. He knew that his story was far from over, that the beanstalk's broken remnants might yet sprout new shoots, and that the giant's realm held secrets still undiscovered. Somewhere out there, perhaps beyond the next hill or hidden in the folds of the sky, awaited new challenges and wonders. As stars blinked awake in the velvet sky, Jack's gaze lifted to the heavens, where the moon sailed like a silent guardian among the constellations. The world was vast and filled with mysteries, but Jack felt ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage, heart, and the magic of his own small but mighty spirit. In that quiet moment, beneath the endless expanse of night, the boy who had climbed a beanstalk into the sky dreamed not of riches or glory, but of the endless journey of discovery that awaited him, and of the stories he would one day tell. The first light of dawn crept slowly across the horizon, painting the sky in delicate shades of pink and gold, and as the village began to stir from its slumber, Jack found himself awake before the sun, the gentle warmth of the morning wrapping around him like a soft blanket. The golden hen perched quietly on the windowsill, its feathers catching the early light and shimmering like spun gold, while the harp leaned against the wooden frame, silent but still radiant with a faint glow that seemed to pulse softly, as if breathing in the new day's promise. Outside, the world was fresh and alive, dew clinging to blades of grass like countless tiny jewels, the air fragrant with the scent of wildflowers and damp earth, mingled with the distant call of morning birds greeting the day. Jack's heart swelled with a mixture of anticipation and calm, for the night's adventures had left him changed in ways he could not yet fully understand. Though the riches he carried promised comfort and security, it was the journey itself, the climb beyond the clouds, the encounter with the giant, the magic woven into every moment, that had awakened a deeper yearning within him. The village was slowly coming alive, with neighbors tending to their chores, the rhythmic sound of water from the well, the clatter of pots and pans, and the murmur of voices greeting the morning. Children tumbled across the fields, their laughter ringing out like bells, chasing after chickens and each other, while elders gathered near the hearths, sharing stories and memories as they had done for generations. Jack stepped outside, the wooden porch creaking softly beneath his feet, and felt the solid earth beneath him, the reassuring weight of home, and yet his eyes kept drifting upward, to where the broken beanstalk's remnants still clung to the earth like fading dreams. He wondered if, beneath the soil, new life stirred, reaching once more toward the sky, daring to grow beyond the bounds of the ordinary. The golden hen clucked softly, drawing his attention, and he smiled, her presence a reminder of the magic and mystery still intertwined with his everyday world. The harp, resting quietly nearby, seemed to hum with quiet anticipation, its strings waiting to sing again, ready to accompany him on whatever new paths awaited. Jack's mother stepped out to greet him, her eyes bright with pride and hope. "You've brought more than treasures back from the clouds, my son," she said softly. "You've brought us all a glimpse of something beyond the life we've known." Jack nodded, feeling the weight and warmth of her words settle deep within his chest. The path ahead was uncertain, but filled with possibility, and he knew that the greatest adventures were not just those that reached to the skies, but those that grew quietly in the heart. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows and bathing the village in golden light, Jack took a deep breath, the fresh morning air filling him with strength and resolve. He glanced once more at the broken stalk, at the treasures that had changed his life, and then turned toward the fields, the forests, the wide open world beyond. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk was not merely one of magic and giants, but of courage, hope, and the unending quest to climb higher, to dream bigger, and to find the extraordinary within the ordinary. With a heart full of wonder and a spirit ready to soar, Jack stepped forward, the golden hen by his side, the harp's silent song guiding him onward into the bright, unfolding day. The day unfurled like a vast tapestry woven with threads of sunlight and shadow, the gentle hum of life awakening across the village blending with the whisper of leaves and the distant chatter of the morning market. Jack moved with a steady purpose, his steps light but deliberate, carrying the golden hen and the harp nestled safely in a woven satchel slung over his shoulder. Each breath he took was filled with the scent of freshly turned soil and blooming wildflowers, the air vibrating with the soft buzz of bees and the distant song of a lark soaring high above the fields like a living note against the endless blue. The village was alive with activity. Merchants arranged their stalls with vibrant fruits and handcrafted goods, while children darted between legs and carts, their laughter weaving through the morning bustle like a joyful melody. Neighbors exchanged greetings and stories, their faces warm with the glow of shared lives and simple joys. Jack paused at the edge of the market square, his gaze drifting upward to the faint outline of the broken beanstalk's remnants that still clung to the earth near the forest's edge. Though its mighty form had been felled, the memory of its towering height lingered in the way the wind seemed to carry a whisper of its magic, rustling the leaves with a secretive sigh. As he continued on, Jack's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the lessons woven through his journey, the courage that had carried him up the beanstalk's dizzying heights, the quick wit that had kept him one step ahead of the giant's grasp, and the kindness that had sparked friendships in the most unlikely places. The golden hen, now settled quietly in his satchel, felt like a living emblem of fortune and possibility, while the harp's silent strings held the promise of music yet to be played, songs that might one day soothe weary hearts or summon hope in the darkest moments. The path led Jack beyond the village and into the embrace of the forest, where ancient trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches weaving a canopy of dappled light that danced on the mossy floor beneath. The air here was cooler, tinged with the earthy scent of pine needles and rich soil, alive with the subtle movements of hidden creatures. The flicker of a squirrel's tail, the glint of a bird's wing, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a curious breeze. Jack's steps were careful but eager, each footfall a small drumbeat in the quiet symphony of the woods. The forest felt like a world apart, a realm where magic seeped into every root and stone, where shadows held stories waiting to be discovered, and where the heartbeat of the earth pulsed steady and strong beneath the fallen leaves. As he ventured deeper, the canopy thickened, filtering the sunlight into golden shafts that illuminated patches of wildflowers and clusters of glowing mushrooms that seemed to pulse softly with an inner light. The harp's faint hum seemed to mingle with the forest's breath, a gentle reminder that music was a bridge between worlds, carrying stories across time and space. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught Jack's attention, and from behind a gnarled oak emerged a small figure, a forest sprite with eyes like glistening dewdrops and hair that shimmered like spun silver. The sprite's smile was both mischievous and kind, her voice a tinkling melody as she spoke. "Traveler of the beanstalk, bearer of golden gifts, what tales do you bring from the kingdom above?" Jack smiled in return, his heart lifting at the unexpected meeting. "I have journeyed far and faced great dangers," he replied, "but it is the wonder of the world, the magic, the music, the friends I have found, that I cherish most." The sprite's laughter rang out like bells, filling the clearing with light and warmth. "Then your path is one of true courage and joy. Come, let me show you the hidden places where the forest's secrets dwell, where the ordinary turns extraordinary, and where every step is a new story waiting to unfold." With a nod and a renewed sense of wonder, Jack followed the sprite deeper into the forest, the golden hen nestled safely and the harp's silent promise guiding him onward into a world where adventure and magic intertwined beneath the ever-watchful sky. The forest deepened around Jack and the sprite, the canopy above weaving a tapestry of emerald light that shimmered like liquid gold filtering through ancient leaves. Every step they took was softened by a carpet of moss so thick it seemed to breathe beneath their feet, alive with the whispers of 1,000 secrets long held by the trees. The air was fragrant with the musky scent of damp earth and blooming wild herbs, mingled with the faint sweetness of honeysuckle that clung to the winding vines creeping along twisted trunks. Birds flitted through the branches in bursts of color, scarlet, sapphire, and emerald, each one a tiny jewel darting in the light, their songs a chorus weaving around Jack like a gentle spell. The sprite's laughter bubbled through the dappled shade like a clear mountain brook as she led him along a hidden path lined with delicate flowers whose petals seemed to glow faintly in hues of violet and silver. "Few have walked this way," she murmured, her voice as soft as a breeze through the leaves, "for these woods guard their mysteries well. But you, Jack, have the heart to see beyond what others perceive." Jack's gaze wandered to the forest floor, where tiny creatures scurried in the underbrush, shining beetles whose shells gleamed like polished onyx, nimble rabbits with noses twitching in the cool air, and a family of hedgehogs rustling gently through fallen leaves like soft, rolling mounds of velvet and quills. The trees themselves seemed to lean in closer, their branches whispering ancient tales carried on the wind, as if eager to share their wisdom with this small boy who had touched the sky and returned unbroken. They reached a clearing bathed in a soft, otherworldly light that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself, where the grass shimmered like spun silver and a crystal-clear stream wound through the glade, its waters singing sweetly over smooth stones like a lullaby sung by the earth. Here, the sprite paused and knelt beside a cluster of tiny, luminescent flowers. "These are the star's tears," she explained, gently brushing a petal with her finger. "They bloom only in places touched by magic and hope. Their glow will guide you through the darkest paths." Jack reached out to touch a flower, feeling a warmth spread through his fingers like the first rays of dawn. His heart beat steady and sure, filled with a quiet courage that felt as boundless as the sky he had once climbed toward. The sprite's eyes twinkled mischievously as she beckoned him forward. "But beware, for the forest holds both friend and foe. Not all who dwell here mean well. Your wit and kindness will be your greatest shields." As if to prove her words, a shadow flickered among the trees, a large, dark shape with eyes gleaming like polished amber. A fox stepped into the clearing, its fur shining like burnished copper in the shimmering light, its gaze sharp yet curious. The sprite smiled knowingly. "This is Bramble, a guardian of the woods. Trust him, for he will guide you where your feet alone cannot tread." Jack knelt and extended a hand, which Bramble sniffed before nudging gently, as if offering friendship and alliance. With the fox at his side, Jack felt the forest's magic pulse stronger, a living rhythm that seemed to hum in tune with his own heartbeat. Together, they would walk deeper into the mysteries that stretched beyond the beanstalk's shadow, exploring realms where courage, hope, and wonder entwined beneath the ever-changing sky. The path ahead wound deeper into the heart of the forest, where light and shadow danced in an endless play of mystery. Jack walked alongside Bramble, the fox's sleek fur brushing softly against the undergrowth, its sharp eyes alert to every movement and sound. The forest seemed to breathe around them, alive with the quiet rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the faint murmur of a hidden brook weaving its way through moss-covered stones. Above, the towering trees stretched toward the heavens like ancient sentinels, their branches interlaced to form a cathedral of green and gold, filtering sunlight into shimmering patterns that dappled the forest floor with liquid light. Jack's heart beat steady with a mixture of excitement and caution, every sense alive to the enchantment and the unknown that waited beyond each bend. The golden hen nestled safely in his satchel, a warm and comforting presence, while the harp's silent promise seemed to hum softly, an unspoken melody weaving through the very air. As they ventured deeper, the underbrush grew thick and tangled, the scent of pine mingling with earth and wildflowers. Suddenly, the path opened into a glade where a circle of ancient stones stood weathered by time, their surfaces etched with runes that glowed faintly in the fading light. The air here thrummed with a powerful magic, a pulse that seemed to echo in Jack's bones. Bramble padded forward, nose low, and let out a soft, almost reverent whine. The forest's whispering shadows seemed to stretch endlessly as Jack, Bramble, and the sprite ventured beyond the circle of echoes, where the trees grew even taller and the air thickened with the scent of ancient magic and forgotten tales. The ground beneath their feet was a tapestry of roots and soft moss, dotted with clusters of glowing fungi that cast an otherworldly light, painting their path in gentle blues and greens that shimmered like stars fallen from the night sky. Jack's heart thrummed in rhythm with the forest's pulse, every sound and sent a note in the symphony of this enchanted realm. The golden hen rested quietly in his satchel, its feathers catching the faint glow of the bioluminescent plants, while the harp seemed to hum softly, as if eager to awaken from its silence and sing once more. As they pressed onward, the sprite's voice wove tales of the forest's ancient guardians, creatures both noble and fierce, whose watchful eyes had seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, and whose wisdom was etched into the very bark of the oldest trees. "Beware the shadow weaver," she warned softly, her eyes narrowing as they flickered with a hint of fear and respect. "A creature born of darkness and forgotten sorrows, it lurks in the deepest shadows, weaving webs of illusion and despair. Only those with pure hearts and steady minds can hope to see through its deceits." Jack's grip tightened on the satchel as the weight of her words settled around him like a cloak. He glanced at Bramble, whose amber eyes gleamed with a fierce intelligence, and then at the sprite, whose presence was a beacon of light in the gathering dusk. Suddenly, a chill wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a whisper that sent shivers down Jack's spine, a soft, sibilant voice that seemed to echo from nowhere and everywhere at once. The forest grew still, the creatures silenced as if holding their breath in fearful anticipation. From the shadows emerged a figure woven from mist and shadow, its form shifting and flickering like a flame caught in the wind. The shadow weaver's eyes glowed like cold embers, and its voice slithered through the air like silk and poison. "Who dares trespass in my domain?" it hissed, the words curling around Jack like tendrils of smoke. Jack squared his shoulders, heart pounding but spirit unyielding. "I am Jack, and I seek not to harm but to understand," he replied, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "I carry hope and courage, gifts from the world above and the forest below." The shadow weaver circled him slowly, its form flickering between shadow and light, testing, probing. "Hope and courage," it whispered, "rare treasures in a world steeped in darkness. But even the brightest flame can be snuffed out." Jack's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let my flame burn brighter still. I will not be afraid." With those words, the golden hen in his satchel stirred, its feathers shimmering with radiant light that pushed back the encroaching shadows. The harp strings began to vibrate, though no hand touched them, releasing a melody both haunting and uplifting, a song of light piercing the darkness. The shadow weaver recoiled, its form unraveling like mist caught in the morning sun, before vanishing into the depths of the forest with a final hiss that faded into silence. Jack exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his body as the forest seemed to breathe again, the shadows retreating into their hidden places. Bramble nuzzled his side, a silent pledge of loyalty and protection, while the sprite's smile returned, warm and bright as dawn breaking over the hills. "You have faced the darkness with a brave heart," she said softly, "and the forest honors you for it. Many trials lie ahead, but with courage, kindness, and the magic you carry, no shadow can hold you." Together, they pressed forward, the path winding deeper into the enchanted woods where secrets and wonders awaited, each step a new thread in the unfolding story of a boy who dared to climb beyond the clouds and into the very heart of magic itself. The deeper Jack ventured into the enchanted forest, the more the world around him seemed to pulse with life and mystery, as if every leaf, stone, and whispering breeze carried its own story waiting to be discovered. The canopy above thickened, weaving a cathedral of emerald and gold, where shafts of sunlight pierced through like liquid fire, illuminating patches of vibrant moss and clusters of wildflowers that nodded gently in the warm air. Bramble trotted ahead with a confident grace, his keen senses alert to every movement in the underbrush, while the sprite floated nearby, her laughter like tinkling bells blending seamlessly with the chorus of birdsong and rustling leaves. Jack's steps were careful but eager, his heart swelling with a mixture of awe and determination. The golden hen nestled securely in his satchel, its feathers shimmering faintly, and the harp, though silent, seemed to hum with anticipation, as if ready to awaken and sing the stories yet untold. As they journeyed, the sprite began to weave tales of the forest's ancient history, recounting legends of heroes and magic, of battles fought beneath moonlit skies and friendships forged between the creatures of earth, air, and spirit. Her voice was soft and melodic, painting vivid pictures that danced through the mind like shadows cast by flickering candlelight. Suddenly, the path opened into a sun-dappled glade where a grand oak stood proudly, its wide trunk adorned with intricate carvings that glowed faintly with an ethereal light. The sprite paused, her eyes shining with reverence. "This is the heartwood tree," she whispered. "It is the soul of the forest, keeper of its wisdom and guardian of its secrets. Many come seeking its counsel, but only those pure of heart may draw near." Jack approached the tree slowly, feeling the ancient power thrumming beneath its bark like the steady beat of a great drum. Placing a hand upon its surface, he felt warmth spread through his fingers, a gentle pulse that seemed to reach into the very core of his being. The carvings shimmered, revealing images of the beanstalk reaching toward the clouds, of giants with thunderous steps, and of a boy small in stature but mighty in spirit. A soft breeze stirred the leaves overhead, carrying with it a melody so faint it seemed woven from the sighs of the wind itself. Jack closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him, feeling the harp's silent song awaken deep within his soul. The forest seemed to lean closer, the creatures around him hushed in reverence, as if bearing witness to a moment both ancient and new. The sprite's voice broke the silence, gentle and wise. "Your journey has brought you far, Jack, and the forest has accepted you as one of its own. But there is more to learn, more to see, and more to become. The path ahead is winding, filled with wonders and challenges, but remember, the greatest magic lies within you." With renewed resolve, Jack stepped back from the heartwood tree, feeling its blessing like a warm cloak around his shoulders. Bramble nudged his hand with a reassuring nuzzle, and the sprite's laughter lifted like a bright song on the breeze. Together, they turned from the glade, the forest opening before them like a living storybook, ready to reveal the next chapter of adventure, friendship, and the enduring power of hope. The path beyond the heartwood tree twisted deeper into the forest's embrace, winding like a river of roots and shadows beneath the towering canopy that seemed to pulse with ancient life. Jack's small feet moved steadily, each step a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the woodland around him, while Bramble trotted confidently, his amber eyes scanning the underbrush for any sign of movement or surprise. The sprite flitted nearby, her silver hair catching shards of sunlight that danced like liquid stars, her laughter a soft melody weaving through the rustling leaves and birdsong. As the forest thickened, the air grew cooler and heavier with the scent of pine and damp earth, mingled with the faint sweetness of wild berries ripening just beyond reach. Jack's gaze wandered to the golden hen nestled in his satchel, its feathers shimmering with a faint, almost otherworldly glow, and the harp resting against his side, silent but pulsing with unseen energy, as if it held its breath in anticipation of the moments yet to come. Suddenly, the trees parted to reveal a clearing unlike any Jack had seen, a place where the sunlight pooled like molten gold and the grass shimmered with dew that sparkled like scattered diamonds. In the center stood a majestic stag, its antlers sprawling like the branches of the ancient trees themselves, each tine glowing softly with a silver light that seemed to hum with power. The stag's eyes held a serene wisdom, deep and knowing, as it regarded Jack with a calm intensity that both humbled and inspired. The sprite's voice softened to a reverent whisper. "This is Eldrin, the Forest King, guardian of balance and keeper of the wild's ancient laws. Many seek his counsel, but few are granted an audience." Jack stepped forward cautiously, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him like a sacred veil. The stag lowered its head in greeting, a deep, resonant sound vibrating through the clearing like the tolling of a great bell. "Welcome, Jack," Eldrin spoke, his voice a rich tapestry of earth and wind. "You have journeyed far, and your heart carries both courage and kindness. The forest has watched your steps and recognizes the light you bring." Jack's pulse quickened with a mix of awe and determination. "Thank you, Eldrin. I seek to understand the magic of this world, to protect the hope I carry and to face whatever challenges lie ahead." The stag's gaze softened, and with a gentle nod, he extended a foreleg, revealing a small pouch woven from leaves and vines, pulsing faintly with a green glow. "Take this, the seed of renewal. Plant it where the darkness threatens to grow, and life will bloom anew. But remember, true strength lies not in power alone, but in the bonds you forge and the kindness you show." Jack accepted the gift with trembling hands, feeling its warmth seep into his skin, a promise of growth and resilience. Bramble circled the clearing, his tail flicking once in silent approval, while the sprite's eyes sparkled with a mixture of pride and encouragement. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the forest floor, Jack felt the weight of his journey deepen, yet also a newfound hope kindling bright within his chest. The path ahead was still uncertain, woven with mystery and danger, but also with magic and friendship. With Eldrin's blessing, the enchanted forest seemed to pulse around him, alive with possibility, and Jack stepped forward into the unfolding story that awaited beyond the twilight veil. The twilight deepened as Jack stepped away from Eldrin's sacred clearing, the seed of renewal warm in his palm like a heartbeat pulsing with promise. The forest around him shifted subtly, the gentle rustle of leaves turning into the soft hum of nocturnal life awakening, the shadows thickening into velvet drapes that swayed gently in the cool night breeze. Above, the stars began to blink open one by one, twinkling like scattered diamonds set against the deep indigo of the sky. Jack moved carefully, the path now softened by layers of fallen leaves that muffled his footsteps, his senses alert to every whisper and shimmer in the darkness. Bramble's keen eyes glowed faintly as he prowled ahead, a silent guardian whose presence was a comfort in the unknown. The sprite hovered close, her silver hair a shimmering veil that caught the moonlight like strands of spun glass, her voice a soft murmur carrying tales of night creatures and hidden wonders. "Beware the midnight glade," she cautioned gently. "It is a place where dreams and shadows entwine, where illusions can trap even the bravest heart. But if your spirit is true, and your courage steady, you may find the answers you seek." Jack nodded, clutching the pouch tightly, feeling the weight of his quest settle into a steady flame within him. As he pressed onward, the forest around him seemed to grow both more magical and more mysterious. Strange lights flickered among the trees, will-o'-the-wisps dancing like playful spirits teasing him forward, their glow flickering in hues of soft blues and greens. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and moss, layered with the faint metallic tang of hidden minerals in the soil. Suddenly, a gentle melody floated on the breeze, a haunting, lilting tune that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. Jack paused, his breath catching as the music wrapped around him like a silken thread, pulling at memories and dreams just beyond reach. The harp in his satchel twitched as if stirred by the unseen song, its strings humming softly in resonance. Drawn by the music, Jack followed the path to a clearing bathed in silver moonlight, where a crystal-clear pool mirrored the stars above. The water shimmered with an ethereal glow, and beside it sat a figure cloaked in moonbeams, a maiden whose eyes sparkled like the night sky, her hair cascading in waves of silver light. She smiled warmly as Jack approached, her voice a gentle song. "Welcome, traveler of courage and heart. I am Lyra, the keeper of night's secrets. Many have sought the truths hidden here, but few have the strength to see beyond the veil." Jack's heart quickened as he stepped closer, feeling the pulse of ancient magic thrumming beneath the surface of the pool. "I seek to understand, to protect, and to bring hope where darkness threatens," he said, voice steady though tinged with awe. Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the constellations above. "Then look deeply into the waters, and see not just what is, but what could be. For the future is woven from the threads of courage, kindness, and the choices made in the quiet moments between shadow and light." Jack knelt beside the pool, gazing into the depths as the water rippled and shimmered. Images began to form, visions of towering giants and sprawling beanstalks, of laughter echoing across golden fields, of a boy no larger than a thumb whose spirit blazed brighter than the tallest flame. The scenes shifted and swirled, stories unfolding like petals in the moonlight, weaving together the threads of adventure, friendship, and the timeless dance of hope and challenge. As the vision faded, Lyra's voice lingered softly in the night air. "Carry these truths with you, Jack. The path ahead will test you, but your heart will light the way. Remember, even the smallest flame can cast away the darkest night." With the stars as his silent witnesses and the forest alive with ancient magic, Jack rose, feeling the weight of destiny settle gently on his shoulders. Bramble padded close, and the sprite's laughter rose like a silver bell, clear and bright in the stillness of the night. Together, they moved forward, stepping beyond the pool's shimmering edge into the unfolding story of courage, wonder, and the enduring power of a heart that dares to dream. The forest around Jack seemed to hold its breath as he left the shimmering pool behind, the weight of Lyra's words settling deep within his soul like a whispered promise. The path before him twisted and stretched like a ribbon of shadows and light, winding between ancient trees whose trunks were thick with moss and whose branches arched overhead to form a living cathedral. The air was cool and scented with pine and wildflowers, but beneath the calm surface stirred a restless magic that prickled at Jack's skin and quickened his heartbeat. Bramble trotted steadily at his side, his fur gleaming faintly in the moonlight, while the sprite flitted ahead, her laughter a gentle chime carried on the night breeze. The silence was broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl, whose haunting hoot echoed through the trees like a sentinel's warning. Suddenly, the forest opened into a vast glade bathed in silver moonlight, where ancient stones rose like sentinels from the earth, carved with runes that pulsed softly with a faint blue glow. The air thrummed with the hum of old magic, thick and tangible, as if the very ground beneath Jack's feet held the memory of forgotten spells and lost kingdoms. The sprite's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is the circle of ancients, a place where the veil between worlds is thin, and the past and present entwine. Here, those who seek wisdom must face their own reflections and confront the truths hidden deep within their hearts." Jack stepped cautiously among the stones, feeling a mixture of reverence and apprehension. The golden hen in his satchel stirred softly, its feathers catching the pale light, and the harp, resting against his side, hummed faintly as if sensing the gravity of the moment. As he moved to the center of the circle, the runes blazed brighter, and the air shimmered with a sudden surge of energy. Before him appeared a shimmering mirror, not made of glass but woven from light and shadow, its surface rippling like a quiet pond disturbed by a gentle breeze. Jack stared into the mirror, and at first, all he saw was his own reflection, small, determined, and wide-eyed. But slowly, the image shifted, revealing scenes from his journey, the towering beanstalk stretching into the clouds, the giant's thunderous footsteps echoing like distant thunder, the forest's deep magic swirling in every leaf and stone. Then the mirror showed not just his past, but possible futures. Paths winding through light and darkness, choices that could lead to triumph or despair, friendships forged and lost, courage kindled or extinguished. The weight of the vision pressed upon him, a flood of emotions swirling like a tempest within his chest. The sprite's voice, gentle but firm, broke through the whirlwind. To move forward, you must embrace all parts of yourself, the fearless boy, the hopeful dreamer, and even the doubts that whisper in the quiet moments. Only by accepting the whole can you truly harness the magic you carry. Jack took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs like a cleansing tide. He reached out and touched the mirror's surface, and the ripples stilled, the images settling into a calm, steady glow. A newfound clarity settled over him, a quiet strength that glowed from within like a steady flame against the night. The golden hen stirred once more, its feathers shimmering brighter, and the harp strings began to vibrate softly, releasing a melody that wove through the circle of ancients like a thread of silver light. With a steady heart and eyes shining with resolve, Jack stepped away from the mirror, ready to face whatever the winding path beyond held. The forest seemed to breathe around him, alive with promise and mystery, as he, Bramble, and the sprite moved onward, three travelers bound by courage, magic, and the unyielding hope of a boy who dared to climb beyond the clouds. The shadows of the ancient forest thickened as Jack pressed forward, his footsteps light but purposeful upon the soft carpet of moss and fallen leaves. Bramble's keen eyes scanned the undergrowth, ears twitching at every subtle sound, a snap of twig, a whisper of wind, the distant call of night birds weaving through the cool air. The sprite darted ahead, her laughter like the tinkling of silver bells, weaving between shafts of moonlight that filtered through the towering canopy. Jack felt the pulse of the forest thrumming around him, alive with secrets and stories woven through every root and stone. As they reached a clearing, the moon hung low, casting an ethereal glow upon a massive beanstalk spiraling upward, its thick vines coiling high into the clouds above like the very pillars of the sky. The beanstalk's emerald leaves shimmered with dew, each one sparkling like a tiny star kissed by dawn's first light. Jack's fingers brushed the rough bark, feeling the vibration of magic coursing through its veins, steady and strong, an ancient power that bridged earth and heaven. The air was thick with the scent of rich earth and sweet sap, mingling with the crisp night breeze that whispered promises of adventure. From somewhere above came a deep, rumbling growl that echoed like distant thunder, and a shadow flickered at the edges of the clearing, the giant, whose footsteps shaped the very landscape with their weight. The ground beneath Jack's feet seemed to hum, alive with the echoes of countless stories and daring feats. His heart beat steady but fast, the thrill of challenge and wonder mingling inside him as the adventure he had dreamed of loomed larger than ever. Bramble growled low, a fierce guardian ready to protect, while the sprite's eyes sparkled with excitement and mischief. Jack took a deep breath and began to climb, each step a mixture of determination and awe as the forest faded beneath him and the world above unfolded in endless sky and possibility. The beanstalk swayed gently, leaves brushing against Jack like the softest silk, while distant clouds drifted lazily, their edges glowing with the promise of sunrise. Higher and higher he climbed, the sounds of the forest replaced by the rush of wind and the faint calls of unseen creatures soaring beyond the clouds. The giant's footsteps echoed louder now, and a rumble of laughter rolled through the air like thunder, deep and powerful and full of ancient strength. Jack's fingers tightened around the vine, his eyes shining with the light of countless dreams and the unyielding spark of courage that had carried him this far. The path ahead was vast and unknown, wrapped in the mystery of giants and magic, of treasures waiting to be found and dangers yet to be faced, a journey stretching beyond the limits of the earth and into the very heart of legend itself. And so, beneath the endless canopy of twinkling stars that stretched across the velvet night, Jack stood at the threshold of a world both ancient and new, where every breath carried the scent of magic and every heartbeat echoed with possibility. The towering beanstalk behind him swayed gently in the breeze, a living bridge between the humble earth he called home and the mysterious realms that whispered promises of wonder and challenge beyond the clouds. In that moment, Jack felt the weight of his journey settle softly on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of hope and courage forged through trials and triumphs, laughter and lessons learned. His spirit, though once small as a seed, had grown vast and strong, nourished by kindness, cleverness, and the unyielding belief that even the tiniest among us can change the course of the world. Around him, the forest hummed quietly, its ancient magic now intertwined with the melody of his own heart, while Bramble's loyal presence and the sprite's shimmering light reminded him that no path is ever walked alone. Jack took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs and fueling the fire within, ready to climb higher still into the unknown, to face whatever wonders and perils awaited with steady hands and an open heart. His story, like the beanstalk itself, reached ever upward, an enduring testament to the power of hope, the strength found in courage, and the endless adventure that unfolds when one dares to dream beyond the limits of the world they know.